Merry Christmas to the viewing audience. Welcome to the vault. Hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Please be safe and be warm. Snowing here in East Tennessee. Thank you for joining me. The Independent is the source. Idaho murders update. Kaylee'S Gonsalves, ex-boyfriend's heartbreak revealed 6 weeks on from student killings. If you need an up-to-date rendering of what is going on in Idaho, please tune into the independent.co.uk. The antioxidant goodness. Thank you for joining me. The investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students has entered its 7th week with no signs police are any closer to catching the killer. Christmas marked the 6-week anniversary of the day Kaylee'S Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Carnotto, and Ethan Chapin were found brutally stabbed to death in an off-campus home in Moscow, Idaho on 13th of November. Fears continue to mount that the case will go cold as no suspects have been identified, no motive determined, and the murder weapon remains missing. The lack of substantial leads from law enforcement has led to vicious speculation on social media, with armchair sleuths looking to pin blame on figures already ruled out by police. Among them is Gonsalves' former boyfriend, Jack DeCure, whose aunt Brooke Miller has now spoken out in his defense. Ms. Miller told the New York Post that her nephew lost the love of his life, and now half of America believes he could be involved in the killings. Police have generally been tight-lipped about what they know or whether they know anything about the crime, at one point claiming that there was no imminent threat to the community at large before reversing course. Last week, Moscow Police Chief James Fry told NBC that the case is not going cold and denied that the victims' families are being left in the dark. He has previously said that certain details are not being disclosed in order to preserve the integrity of the investigation. It was not clear from Mr. Fry's answer on Thursday whether the police do not know if the killer has left the area or whether they know but are declining to say so as not to spook the culprit. I'm going to give you commentary, trying to find where he spoke, pertaining to the death of his ex-girlfriend, Mr. Jack. One moment. Try to get that information. Somehow it's not pulling up. Let's see. Thank you all for joining me. Hello, Brittany. Thank you for the donation. Thank you. Thank you all so much. For some reason, I had it right here. Well, speaking to the New York Post on Friday, Jack DeCure's aunt Brooke Miller said rampant speculation online has deeply affected the 22-year-old who is already experiencing the loss of his once longtime girlfriend. Mr. DeCure was cleared as a person of interest by Moscow police early on in the investigation. They're just the most ridiculous conspiracies. He's not only lost the love of his life and what we all thought, and he probably thought as well, would be his future wife. You know, get married and have kids and all of that, Miss Miller said. Jack DeCure, Gonsalves' ex-boyfriend, has been baselessly accused of participating in the quadruple murder. One second. I don't know what's going on. For some reason, this content is not wanting that load. when I come back, I'll bring it back. His honest spoken, Miss Miller, baseless ideologies, assumptions that he's involved. The very reason why I did not put his name in the title of my video. I will not put any of their names in the video. Anybody try not to anyway, because it's redundant at this point, just going on and on about who you think has killed these kids. As I said, until you know the victims, you can't know who the killer is. Please go to the library, to my library, to check out my upload that I did earlier pertaining to the location of the house and the proximity of the homes and apartments, because this is where you'll get a better understanding of why you can't pinpoint who the killer is. The kids were surrounded by many other homes, apartments, possibly renters, possibly owners. And as I said, until you know the kids, you won't know who the killer is. I take you on this brief tour up the street to show you how dense it is, as Brian Enton has told you. The house is surrounded by other homes, houses broke up into apartments, however you want to claim it. The point is, from the corner up, you have a bullseye view of the house. There are trees not obscuring the house. So you could stand literally at the corner from where the house sits to the corner and watch the house, view the house. Thank you, Brittany. When you stand at the corner of that street, of King Road, you can literally see the balcony, which would have been Kaylee'S bedroom that she allegedly no longer lived in. I really don't have verification. That's just different people saying it. But until I hear from the police to say she did not live there at that time, I would prefer to hear it from the police, because everybody else talking and listening to other people's tweets and posts, that's not good enough for me. I need to have verification she did not live there, because as I said, this is what frames the story to give you an understanding or a hypothesis of who the killer is, or killers, because I don't know if it's more than one. Anywho, the video shows you the street. The street also aligns that has the frat house on it. It's all walking distance. Literally just roll down the street on a skateboard to the frat house. And I'm not saying the frat house is any significance, just saying it is right nearby, since everybody wants to talk about the frat house. So, bullseye view, either direction, you can see the house. Okay, from that corner. A house sits directly beside the house. The front door faces their parking lot. Then there's a house behind that in an enclosed fence. So anybody can have a bullseye view of the girls talking, entertaining. I made that video to ask, is the killer living beside the girl's house? Because it makes perfect sense to ask that question, because you'd have to know, one, who's there before entering. How did they enter? Okay? If I'm watching the house from the front, then I have a bullseye view of all the cars going in. So I give you that area view as well, the people who lived across the street. You have a building that's the back of an apartment building facing a fence, a concrete wall, and then the house, the street, then the house. Other houses, I give you a 360. The apartments to the right of the house that sit up on the hill, there's a drive there beside the house. I think it's 2 buildings or so. If I'm wrong, I'll stand corrected. Nonetheless, traffic. The back of the house faces other people's yards, at least 2 houses or so. So anyone could watch. Now, factor in binoculars, telescope, you have a bullseye view of the house. So you could be sitting on your porch, in your living room, den, whatever room that you want to look and gawk. Neighbors, disturbances, police calls, noise ordinance, whatever. Who was complaining? How many times did they complain? Are they the same complaints? Okay? We're going to chop all that up. And yes, it's redundant at this point, repeating the same things over and over. But as I always tell people, when you go back into a story, when you get a bullseye view of a home, you get to see the area view, the house, where it sits, what's facing the house, beside the house. You can get a better understanding of the killers, her motivation. Because the one thing you can't do is watch the house from behind and know what's going on in the front. Stay woke. And I'm not going to sit here and think that the kids didn't enter through the front door, because how the kids enter and how the killer enter are two different things. I would assume that the children enter into the front of the house. Most people's assumption is that the killer entered from the back of the house. Well, he still would have had to go to the front of the house if he faces the house or he came from the front street. So you don't even know where the killer's coming from. You do not know if the killer is coming from the right of the house, which is the apartment buildings, which are the apartment buildings. He came from behind there, slid down the hill. The houses behind, jumped the fence or came through the wooded area. See, you don't know. You don't know how they entered the house or how they exited the house. Allegations that the door was open that morning. Do not know if that's true or not. Who's to verify it? The only ones that can verify it are the people who lived in the house that survived, the two girls. So did they see the door open when they got up and ran out after finding Ethan Chapin upstairs? See, nobody to give you any verification. Will they ever speak about the door? Because that will also tell us that possibly the killer left out through the front door. Then that will ask the next question. If he did leave out of the front door, why didn't he go into their rooms? Were their doors locked or not? Were the victim's doors locked or not? Did he jimmy the locks, pick the locks? So you have to ask all those questions. Keypad on their doors or not? Yes or no? Thank you for joining me. Welcome to the Vault. If you want to donate to this great network, $ Big Angie 129 Cash App. Super chats and stickers are welcome during this live. Miss Miller has spoken out about her nephew. Many of you don't seem to realize that the accusations that you make about these people that you do not know and you just heard of them because somebody picked them out of a video or a Facebook post, TikTok video means nothing. I would assume these kids knew a lot of people. So you'd have to be throwing daggers at anybody that mentioned their name. Brother, sister, cousin, parent, neighbor. The list goes on. When are you all going to draw a line between putting these people on blast? I just saw another person's network earlier that has a alleged composite of a person that could look like the killer. What is the point in that? You people are exacerbating a very dire situation. 4 people are dead. And you want to put up a composite, but then say, oh, well, I'm not saying this is the person or this is how he looks. Well, then why put it up? Because what's going to be messed up is if somebody actually favors that composite, that computerized composite, or however you came to make this person's face appear on your screen, and then this person is walking around somewhere and gets beat down, jumped, shot because of your video with this composite. Very irresponsible. Very irresponsible. Very irresponsible. And your video needs to be flagged because people are sick out here and they're picking on anybody that knows these kids. So you putting up this computerized sketch on your channel is very irresponsible and it's disrespectful because all it takes is for somebody to mirror that person's, that composite, and then somebody starts stalking that person and doxing their pages and harassing them, all because of a YouTube video. You people have got to stop because you're endangering the lives of civilians that you do not know if they're guilty or not. Because as I said, the kids knew a lot of people. So you're going to just pick anybody out of the group that knows them, like the photo. Well, He did it. She did it. They must have done it. But in my video, I show you the street, the house, the proximity of houses, and how close the killer could actually be, live, or visited someone that lived next to the girl's house. And I also noticed at least 3 white cars in the house that sits, which would be to the left of their house. They have that house blurred out, but the cars are not blurred out. So Angela, which is something I rarely do, tried going in, looking at different types of cars to try to get a make of a car that's sitting in that short parking lot. Very hard to do. The car looks bigger, the white car that sits there, but it's in bullseye view in the Google Maps. And it also looks like it has tinted windows. But I don't think it's the Elantra they're talking about. I can't say. Because the newer Elantras in that year, 11 to 13, did not look as big as the white car that's sitting in that drive. But it was something to think about. Could they have the car mixed up, or what is their tip exactly? Who gave the tip, and what is the tip? And why that Elantra, and what was so important about it, and what was its proximity to the house? What would be baffling to me is if indeed the Elantra was visiting one of those houses that I have in my video. And that's the house that sits to the left of 1122 King Road. Because when you go into my video, you will see at least 3 white vehicles sitting in that parking lot. Now, Elantra made a smaller car with a hatchback and that little wing thing on the back that sits at the top of the hood. On the top of the car. Can't say if that's one of the little cars that's also in the parking lot of that house. But it made me wonder when I saw the Google photos of the house and 3 white cars parked in that small parking lot. Very interesting. It was at least a small hatchback car in the front, the white car 4-door sedan with tinted windows with no hubcaps, and then the one on the other side closest to a door would be, I believe, a white SUV, 4 doors. So I'd like to know for sure the Elantra that they're looking for, is that a witness or the perpetrator? I'm going to go ahead and continue my content. Thank you for joining me. Once again, as I said, the stalking of the victims or persons of interest needs to stop. Because in the end, as I've said before, you would have never known about the grub bus had the grub bus not released the video. You wouldn't know anything about the video of the guy now walking the girls down, the hoodie guy. You wouldn't know anything about any of that had that information not been released. So you would have had nobody to throw daggers at to say, oh, it's him, he acted strange. Yeah, and then you see that he was walking with them. New footage released. But you would have never known that had that not been released. That's the point. The heavyset guy that came forward in the beginning, that called the police, you would have never known nothing about him had he not come forward. Now the rideshare guy has come forward. Not identified himself, naturally for security reasons. But that's the point. You would have no idea about any of these people had they not been introduced into the storyline by CCTV footage. Jeremy, the neighbor right next door, put himself in the storyline. Didn't have to. Vape shop guy, same thing. The guy that heard the scream, same thing. But yet that's not what he said in the beginning on Facebook about the story. So you have to be careful of everybody putting themselves in the story. Those who didn't put themselves in the story, and those everybody wants to throw in the story. Because in the end, the kids knew a lot of people. So therefore, you can't say who the perpetrator is. I'm going to get back to my information pertaining to this, the updates pertaining to this case. These murders took place on the 13th of November. Once again, all of this he said, she said gossip, vicious speculation on social media, with armchair sleuths looking to pin blame on somebody is what got Mr. Jack DeCour's name out in the public, and his aunt has spoken. And she feel like they're baseless, these allegations against her nephew. The New York Post is the source for this information. Once again, at one point they were saying that there was no imminent threat to the public, but then they had to reverse that commentary. Police Chief James Fry told NBC that the case is not going cold and denied that the victims' families are being left in the dark. And that's what I said before. Tight-lipped because he wants to preserve the integrity of the investigation. It was not clear from Mr. Fry's answer on Thursday whether the police do not know if the killer has left the area, or whether they know but are declining to say so as not to spook the culprit. Very true. Do they know who the culprit is or have an idea of the culprit? Is the car suspect or witness? The white Elantra. While police won't say what they do know, they have resorted to debunking some of these online theories that they know to be incorrect. But with each piece of information revealed or each theory debunked, dozens more questions emerge about the case. The Independent takes a deep dive into the mountain of unsolved questions and the scant details we do know. With each piece of information revealed or theory debunked, dozens of questions emerge. Sheila Flynn, Rachel Sharp, Andrea Blanco report on the murders that have rocked the small town of Moscow. It could have been anyone in any U.S. college town on any Saturday night. That's how typical the murdered students' behavior was in Moscow, Idaho, just hours before they were brutally stabbed to death. Sheila retraces the victims' last known movements from the ground in Moscow. There have been numerous questions about the leadership in this investigation. This is from the chief. Let me be clear. This is Moscow Police Department's investigation, and I am the chief of police. Moscow Police Department Chief James Fry said in a video statement on Tuesday. He continued, the decisions are mine and mine alone. I have an excellent command staff with over 94 years of combined experience overseeing investigations, daily operations, and I select who runs the investigative teams. Idaho police said they determined that a white sedan found in Oregon is not connected to the 13th of November stabbing deaths of the Idaho 4 students. Investigators are still looking for any information about a white 2011-2013 Hyundai Elantra that was seen near the rental home around the time the students were killed. So far, the law enforcement agency has identified over 22,000 vehicles matching that make and model. If you have information to this crime, 208-883-7180. Email tipline, all lowercase, at ci.moscow.id.us. A University of Idaho graduate who lived in a home where 4 students were killed in November has said that residents usually could hear each other's footsteps. It's definitely an old, creaky house, Cole Altenator told ABC News, who graduated in 2022. You can't walk up the stairs or any of the floors without everybody in the house knowing it. So let's question this person, Mr. Cole. I'm assuming this is a male. Is this the same person that gave commentary that you couldn't hear anything on the 3rd floor? Because he's a guy. These were all girls living in the house. I'm questioning all of this. Also got information, okay, somebody moved out the early part of the year. So what early part of the year is what? To me would be what? January, February. He graduated in 2022, so when did he actually leave the house? You're entitled to your interpretation. You can't walk up any of the stairs or any other floors without everybody in the house knowing it. Police have said that 2 surviving roommates were in the home at the time of the killings, but they've been cleared. The department said that the roommates are not believed to be witnesses of the crime and likely slept through the attack. This is what the media got wrong about Moscow. In the aftermath of the quadruple murders of Madison Mogen, Kaylee'S Gonsalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xander Kernodle, droves of reporters descended to Moscow November 13th. The town has been largely portrayed in cable news as a fairly safe town, Stephen Lyons reports for The Independent. These out-of-town parachuters use words like idyllic and peaceful to describe the city of 25,000 as if wheat fields and wilderness could never harbor such violence, he writes. If the reporters had dug a little deeper, they might have discovered that dramatic murders, disappearances, and even mass shootings are part of Moscow's legacy. So some of you probably did not know that the town has had creepy situations go on in Moscow many moons before this quadruple homicide. I will get to that here in a second. The University of Idaho will increase the security next semester after 4 of its students were killed in a nearby off-campus home. Nearly 6 weeks after the fatal stabbings of the 4 individuals, the killer remains at large. Police in the town of just 25,000 are still receiving tips about the Hyundai Elantra seen near the crime around the time of the slayings. These are the safety programs and resources that the college plans to offer in the spring. Distribution of Birdie personal safety alarms, self-defense workshops, vigilance education workshops, spring safety and light walk assessment, campus and community town hall focusing on home safety, green dot bystander intervention training, stalking awareness education. 17,000 tips submitted, no arrests made. This was uploaded 6 hours ago. 6 weeks in from the brutal stabbings of the 4, Moscow police seem no closer to finding the perpetrator. Thousands of tips about a white Elantra seen near the scene around the time of the murders, in which occupants police say have critical information, also have not materialized in an arrest. So, when you say critical information, one would ask, what does that mean? Why do these people have critical information? So has somebody given a tip about somebody or somebody's being in this said car? Have no idea. In an update on Christmas Eve, Moscow police said investigators plan to work through the holiday weekend to process, analyze, and work on more than 7,650 email tips, 4,313 phone tips, 4,583 digital media submissions. The department encourages the public to continue submitting information they believe could add context to the investigation. Our focus remains on the investigation, not an individual's activities displayed in the tip. Whether you believe it is significant or not, your information might be one of the puzzle pieces that help solve these murders, Moscow police said in a statement on Friday. These are the latest updates pertaining to this crime. So we have an aunt coming forward, speaking on behalf of her nephew, Jack Takua, who is distraught heartbroken over his ex, assuming that he would have possibly married the girl, had kids, but it did not work out. I heard on a podcast this morning, someone's channel, that she broke up with him allegedly 3 weeks before. I do not know if that's true or not. You see, all these are just endless rumors. And the thing about it that's so interesting is, where are you people hearing this stuff from? Because the dead's not talking. Her parents, I have not heard them say anything about the relationship, when she broke up, why she broke up, who broke up with whom. They are aiding this young man as an innocent bystander, which, as I said, is no different than The police clearing whoever they wanted to clear. How's it different? You don't think he did anything. Some people think he did because he's upset that they broke up. Who's to say that it was not an amicable breakup? Everybody don't kill people just because they broke up with somebody. And the fact that she was trying to call him that morning, allegedly, he was asleep. That is the version I've gotten through social media. He was asleep, but that's the point. Was he asleep or not asleep? I don't know. Because if you don't hear it from the horse doesn't say it to the news or the police, then you don't know. And is that the version he gave her family? Oh, I didn't see the messages till the next day, or later that day, rather. By then it was too late because she was deceased. So did he have a role in this crime? Obviously, he's denying it. Her family is backing him. Are they still speaking? Do they talk regular? Where is he exactly? Is he returning to school? These are all the questions I have pertaining to this crime. I'm going to play you some audio via the YouTube queue. Thank you so much for joining me. Is the killer living nearby? Was it a neighbor? Is it a neighbor? Neighbor's company? Very interesting information. As I said, check out my video from earlier. It gives you a tour of the street because perhaps the killer lives on the street or was visiting someone on the street. And possibly they have dumped the car, painted the car, trashed the car, chopped up the car. Somebody knows about the car, we're scared to come forward, or has somebody come forward and given information about the car. And that is why they are looking for this 2011, 2013 Elantra. But most people would assume a person would already know the ideal make of the car if somebody actually gave a tip pertaining to a person that owns the car. Would a PI help or hurt the Idaho 4 slayings case? This is a poll on my community page. 45% of you said it would help. 13% of you said it would hurt. And 42% of you said not sure. Well, let's chop that up. Let's see if a PI would help this investigation. And also, web sleuths. Are they helping the investigation? Armchair detectives, people messing up this case with rumors and gossip. Because you see, some of those tips that are going into the police station are possible just gossip that people are hearing on social media, such as YouTube. And that is wasting resources by having someone write all that information down when it's gossip. Who you think did it. You don't live there. You don't know the kids. You don't know anything about Moscow. Please don't call the police department with that he said, she said stuff. Because it's not helping. So what tips have been generated? What tips have been helpful? Let's talk about that situation of those that have not been helpful. The gossip groups. Messy boots are what we call them.
And I knew, and yet again, we're looking at this Uber driver who did say nothing suspicious, nothing happened that night, but wondering why he wasn't questioned earlier by police. Is this yet sort of another instance, perhaps, of something slipping through the cracks, an investigation that isn't quite going the way that we would hope it would?
You know, look, it's always easy to be sort of a Monday morning quarterback, right? You know, I faced that when I worked counterterrorism on the day of September 11th at the CIA. Of course, everyone's critical about what you did or didn't do. But I do think here, these are just regular investigative steps that probably should have been taken that don't take really the FBI or other law enforcement organizations to come in. Those are things that you should know to do. You know, seizing CCTV, asking that it not be recorded over immediately. Things like looking at their apps, looking at who took them home. that really should have been honed in on right away. So I do think that that is probably a step that law enforcement missed. And I know that, the Uber driver said that their behavior was, I guess, unremarkable. And that is remarkable in and of itself. That is important to know. And I really just think, though, I think on the flip side of that, the fact that they still have not released the crime scene after 6 weeks is interesting to me. And in a way, I'm actually glad that they haven't, that they're taking their time to go through that. I know that's frustrating to some people. I have never worked a crime scene that's been held for 6 weeks. That's a really long time. However, just a few days ago, we saw people going in and out with what looked to me like evidence retrieval boxes. And so I think that that's really important that they haven't done that. So they've done some things, I think, really within protocol, and other things not within protocol.
Interesting. And you mentioned, it is remarkable that there was nothing remarkable that night, that the girls seemed to be behaving normally. In your investigator's mind, what is remarkable about that? What can we infer?
So there's a couple things that I would infer for that. First, the girls didn't think that they were in danger. They had no interaction that evening, wherever they were, whether it was the bar, the food truck, walking around downtown, all the places that we've seen them. They had no reason to believe that their lives were in danger and that they had crossed paths with anyone who made them feel in danger. And so I think that's important, and that potentially, I'm not saying that it will, but potentially it could rule out anyone that they would have come into contact with that night as a potential suspect. So I think that is a critical piece. I think also what this may tell us is that, the suspect either entered in after they were already in the house, or perhaps was laying in wait inside the house. So this was someone that may have been known to them, but not someone that they perhaps came into contact that gave them sort of a feeling of danger that evening.
Really appreciate that. Thank you. And we just heard from our reporter, Alex Capriello. Now, a professor at University of Idaho is suing that TikTok user who accused her of the killings on campus. Do you believe that the internet sleuths have taken this too far?
In this case, I do. And I'm sorry to be so harsh and blunt about that, but the reality is the internet lives forever. Whether or not this professor is cleared, she will always have this when people search her name, and that is incredibly damaging to her and to her potential career path. And so I think we need to be very, very careful when naming names. And I think also this takes police focus perhaps off of this investigation. Right now, it looks to me like this is a civil lawsuit, but if they decide to go forward with criminal charges, you are now asking Moscow PD to investigate this as well as the murders of these 4 victims. And so I think really you're tying the hands of law enforcement in doing this, and you are potentially damaging this person's career forever. You may have feelings about who you think the murderer may be, and that's okay. But we can't put that out there without evidence, without an indictment, in a space that will live on forever.
I appreciate that, and it's true, the internet has such a long memory. Is there anything officials or law enforcement can do about the spread of misinformation or accusations online, or is it incumbent upon people like this professor to defend their own reputation?
That is an excellent question. I think it's really hard. To me, the internet is like this leaky sieve of data, right? It's really, really hard to warn internet sleuths. And, one of the things that they can do to make it be taken more seriously is press criminal charges against this person who is basically naming this professor by name. But again, you run the risk of now you are deflecting from this active murder investigation to pursue these criminal charges. So criminal charges are one thing that you can do to deter this type of behavior. However, I do think that the onus is upon people to not be engaging in this type of very specific behavior. It's okay to think about what you think could have been missed or what you think could have happened, but it's not okay to name names without any kind of criminal indictment.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find news.
All right, everybody. News Nation is the source. So everybody wants to be a detective in this case, but you're not the one having your name ruined because somebody decided to throw your name out there in affiliation with the victims. Killer lying in wait, possibly. Know them, possibly. Don't know them, possibly. Someone in the chat mentions about last resident living there. The main question is, was the keypad lock changed? Bingo card. Because you have to use deduction. One person moving in, one person moving out. How long did everybody stay in the house? When did everybody move into the house? And you'd have to change the keypad lock according to how many people are moving in and out. I bet nobody ever thought about that, did you? And who is the person that sets the keypad lock in motion? Bet you didn't think about that either. Since this person moved out 6 or so, 7 months ago. Now, is this Cole a guy or a girl? Stay woke. Messy boots, armchair detectives, people making lies about people, putting their names out there, very dangerous. You're ruining the reputations of many people by throwing their names out there. You could cause them harm. They could also self-harm because the pressure becomes astronomical. Their livelihood is affected, their home, their work, their job, their friends, their family. Nobody's considering that. Now, University of Idaho professor, Caucasian lady is being implicated into the storyline as a cohort and also having some type of relationship with the victim, allegedly by an African-American female who has lost her damn mind. Obviously. She doesn't know these people from a can of paint. I don't know these people from a can of paint. So that's why I do not speculate on who killed the kids, because I don't know these kids. I don't know their friends. I don't know who they've interacted with. I don't know their neighbors. I don't know who had a problem with them as a neighbor. I don't know how many complaints they've had for noise. It's all strange, this case. And it's strange because we don't know anything. Possibly Ellie does know more. The FBI is involved. The state's involved. They will have more information because they can track devices, apps, see who somebody's been talking to, GPS on cars. We don't have that information. But I'm not speculating on anything. I just bring you the information and I talk about the information. This is a very diabolical case because we're talking about 4 individuals. Now we have all these people being thrown into the mix. TikToker being sued by a professor from Idaho University. She has a lawyer. She's been warned twice. She still was making content pertaining to this lady being involved. Very nasty allegations to accuse a woman of sleeping with another woman and also being in cahoots with a co-conspirator to help kill this kid and her friends. Very nasty. See, this is when you know you've gone too far. This is why you have to stop saying who did it. As this former agent says, you're entitled to speculate, try to figure out who killed who, what happened, how they entered. But when you throw their names out saying, yeah, they did it, that's dangerous. And as I said, I have done it before in a few cases that I've talked about, not very many. I could say, well, this person was last with the individual, the child. But naturally, I don't have proof that they killed the child or the person. It's my intuition, but that's not fact. In this case, I'm not speculating. That's why I do not talk about any Jacks, Janes, Bobs. I don't do it. Because this case is very dire. And sometimes you have to learn from previous experience in talking about true crime to not do what you did in the last conversation. So I've decided in this case, I will not accuse anyone of murder of the kids. Because I don't know the kids. And there's too many entities to speculate. These kids had thousands of friends, hundreds of friends, associates, work partners. There's no way I could say this one did this one did that. This is the reasoning. Because so far, nothing has been validated by authorities pertaining to stalkers, problems. So how can you speculate on 1, a suspect, 2, a motive? You can't. You can't. Did the killer lie in wait? Was the killer already in the house? Or the killer was somewhere watching, waiting for the kids to return? Who was the target? 1, more than 1. Was the house the target? Just a house that had girls, nice looking girls, somebody passed by, saw a bunch of girls coming and going, just decided on this fateful night they would commit a crime. Why this house? Why these girls? Why this morning? Did someone kill these kids? How did they enter? How did they leave? Or two happenstance because their target was one of the other girls. Was the third floor the target? But what makes no sense about that is allegedly Kaylee was supposed to be moving. If that's true or not, I really don't know. So did she actually have her things out of the house? Or had some things still left behind? What is the truth to that? Thank you for joining me. And yes, the more you call in with damaging gossip, you are taking away resources because these people are trying to catch a killer and they do not have time to, as I said, write down information that's from gossip. YouTube, Facebook, TikTok gossip. And I hope that professor goes all the way with the cease and desist of this female because what she's doing to her is horrendous. So what this girl is doing to her is no different than you thinking Jack killed these kids or the hoodie guy did it or the neighbor did it. It's the same thing. You're calling out their government name and you're saying they are the killer. And some of you want to judge the black girl for what she's doing to the professor, but when you do it, it's the same thing. It's no different. You just didn't say, oh, by the way, yeah, he was having sex with this one, this one, and this one. But it's still the same. You're claiming somebody murdered another human being and you don't have proof. It is the same. The message is the same. Do they have a profile of the killer? Moscow Police Department, FBI, and state police. News Nation is the source. Thank you for joining me.
Formerly worked for the FBI Behavior Analysis Unit. She is with us live now. Thank you for giving us some time on this case. There's so much curiosity. There's so much focus on this investigation. I want to talk to you a little bit about the killer because that's your background. It's been your experience. It's a sick thing that happened here, and it's a sick person who did it. But compiling a profile of this person based on the evidence, based on what police know, how do you do that? Where do you start?
Well, the first thing that you have to do is pull together all the information. That means you look at the forensic results, the lab results. You look at crime scene photographs. You review all the investigative reports. And it's through the analysis of blending all that together that gives you the information about how well planned it was or not well planned. It gives you an idea of post-offense behavior, which right now is of critical importance. It also gives you information about the offender's personality. So, for example, if this offender went in at that time of the morning, the house that was occupied by at least 6 people, I mean, that's a very high-risk behavior, and a high-risk personality is not just going to be high risk in the middle of a homicide. They're going to be high risk in other things that they do outside of this homicide. So I think as much as law enforcement can give the public bits and pieces of this offender's personality, the more likely that they will be able to identify a possible suspect.
What does it tell you, Mary Ellen, that the person who did this, or even about the crime that was committed, that the 2 people in the home that did survive, that the killer did not go after them? What does that indicate?
Well, based just on public source information, what I would say is that there was someone or multiple people in that house that were the focus of the offender. And that can be borne out in terms of what the injury pattern was to these victims. So if you have 1 or 2 victims whose injuries are much more severe and or different from the other victims, and then you still have the 2 surviving victims, that would tell me that once the offender got to the victims, that they wanted to focus on, that they were able to complete the crime and then exit the house. So it becomes a matter of who really was the focus of the attack.
And police have not said yet, but it is scary to think that whoever did this is out there living their life day to day, right? Pretending that everything is normal, going about a routine, essentially being around the public, people that they know. Talk about the mental state of somebody trying to conceal this awful thing that they did and the weight that that puts on someone.
Well, I would say that it's likely that this is someone who is following the investigation on both on TV and online to understand where are the investigators in this case. I would also say there's probably leakage, and leakage is just like a leaky faucet, that this offender may be talking about the case just like everyone else is. And they may be saying things that would be critical of law enforcement. Oh, they're never going to solve this case. And their leakage could also include comments about, well, the victims brought this on themselves. So you compile that with a group of personality traits. So this is an offender who's a high-risk offender. This is someone who is very experienced with that knife and took it with him. That knife is very important to this offender. And this offender is practiced with this knife. People that know this offender know that this is someone that's has anger, terrible anger issues, is very impulsive, is a very revengeful person, most likely, and now they're aware of the knife and the fact that even before the murders, this person probably spoke about this knife and how skilled they were at it. And now you blend in their interest in the case as well as their criticism of law enforcement and their victim blaming. Now, is that going to point to the person down the street? No, not necessarily, but we only need one person to come forward, one person who knows that this could very likely be a very viable suspect in this case.
Wow. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your...
News Nation is the source. Very interesting information. Do they have a profile yet of the suspects? Why were two roommates left unharmed? Did the perpetrator go in the house with the intention of killing one or all of the ones that were killed? We don't know. We got contradictory information from the family, the Gonsalves family, of perpetrator didn't have to go upstairs, wounds not matching between Maddie and Kaylee. But he never just came out outright and said, Mr. Gonsalves, hey, yes, my child, I believe, was intended target. So who was the target? Naturally, if you fight back, you will have more wounds. So who was the target? But you do have to ask the ultimate question about the two surviving roommates, because why were those two left unharmed? I've showed you the layout of the house. You now hear a person who lived in the house saying you could hear anybody going up and down the steps, because it's an old creaky house. So you have to ask, were those two girls that survived asleep or not? Or did they hear something, got scared, and remain in their beds, frightened, didn't want to inquire, didn't want to text, call anybody, police, or call the girls upstairs to say, hey, what's going on? Hey, something doesn't sound right. And I don't care what anybody says. If they were up listening, I refuse to believe they thought that was a party going on. Come on now. They may have been left alone for a reason. That's why I'm asking the questions. Was it intentional to leave the two alive? If so, then that means the killer knew that the two were on the bottom. And as I've shown you the layout of the house, there's no way the killer did not know there were rooms downstairs, because he had to go around the corner to where allegedly Ethan and Xana's room, where Xana's room is. So you're going to see the low-bearing wall, which shows you, hello, there's steps that go down. So we're killing all these people. Why not go down the steps to see what's downstairs? And if I'm to believe the door was actually open, left open that morning, would I also assume that the killer went out through the front door? So how are you going to miss the bathroom, the laundry room, and two other bedrooms? Please make me understand. Was this intentional for those four victims only, or the two and Ethan and Xana were happenstance, eyewitnesses, got up, heard something? What's the truth? You hear this Expert talking about vengefulness. Use of a knife. Took the knife. Good with a knife. So has he used a knife before on another human or animals? Has he been in trouble with the law before? Petty crimes, thievery. What? Does he have a criminal background, but not a felonious criminal background? Who is the killer? Young, old, middle age, student, non-student, what? Worker, what? Co-worker, who? Somebody that the girls have dated, liked, didn't like, altercations, neighbor complaints. Who is the killer? And once again, why were the two roommates left unharmed? How did he enter? Front door, back door. Is it somebody that already had a code? How many times has the passcode been changed? You have to ask all those questions. Has he been talking about the crimes, making derogatory comments about the crime, the victims? Victim shaming. Has he called in tips? Bingo card. But you didn't think about that. Has the killers called in tips? Does he want to be caught? Has he killed before? Does he have more killing to do? Are we talking about a serial killer in the making? Or he's got it out of his system. He got who he wanted. He's done. Hello, Mars. Thank you for joining. Has the killer killed before? Is this a serial killer already working in the United States? Or is this just somebody angry with one of the girls, all of the girls, and he's done with killing? Is this a cooling off stage? You've heard experts mention that perhaps this is a killer in the making or has killed, and he's going to cool off for a month or two, and then he'll be back out there hunting new victims. Local, Moscow, outside of Moscow, Idaho, or a neighboring state. Washington State is next door. We know that the great Theodore Bundy worked multiple states. He moved about. Is this a cross-state killer? Because when you hear that it neighbors Washington State, you'd have to become very leery that the person has already killed before, or this is his start. Let me go somewhere close by, dip in, dip out. Then he goes back to another state, his state, kill, Washington, Oregon, somewhere else, Utah, wherever. In and out, dip in, dip out. Because that's when it's harder to catch someone when they don't live in the general area. Now, you have to remember each killer is different. One killer may want to travel 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. Every killer is not the same. Every sadist is not the same. Is the killer living in Idaho? Is the killer living in Moscow? Is the killer living outside Moscow by 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? What is the jurisdiction of the killer? Has he killed before? Already a serial killer? Already a killer of somebody else? What are we saying here? Or is he a neighbor? Somebody that lives on the street? Somebody that lives in the close perimeter of this house? Apartment complex is facing the house, side of the house, back of the house, street over. Is the killer a neighbor? Or did he visit somebody on that street or general area? Did somebody hire him to kill the girl? Did that ever occur to anybody? That he was hired? Somebody bitched and moaned and complained about something, such as a neighbor with a noise complaint. Got upset, told somebody, and they decided to go kill the girls. And yes, did he walk there or pull up and park his car close by? Does he live in the general area? Is he a neighbor? What is the profile of this killer? 20s, 30s, or middle age? Children, family, dating? Does he own pets? Has he offended before? Petty crimes? felonious crimes, but not caught. Stay woke. Do the kids know their killer? Did they know him? Had he been in the house before? Is he somebody that just watched, but never been in the house before? You have to admit it's brazen to go in the house no matter what. But if I'm to believe that he watched from behind, as I've said before, you can't see who's coming through the front. Even if you're watching from the front, do you know about the back? But as I said in my video earlier, you can see the back of that house coming up that street. Bullseye view, even just standing at the corner. Next commentary. Thank you for joining me. News Nation was that source of a profile. Has a profile been entered in? Let's hear from the Uber driver that dropped the kids off that night. Cleared also as a potential suspect. Thank you for joining me.
Murders of 4 university students. News Nation speaking with the Uber driver who gave 2 of the 4 victims a ride home the night they were murdered. This is families of the victims are enduring a holiday with loved one missing and police remaining tight-lipped. Alex Capriello live in Moscow with the very latest. Good morning, Alex.
Hey, Kelly, good morning to you. I spoke to that rideshare driver who presumably was one of the very last people to see both Kaylee and Maddie alive. He shared new details with me, including the fact that he was the one who turned himself into the police. His firsthand testimony is helping us build additional context about this case. News Nation tracked down and spoke to the Uber driver who was likely one of the last people to see Idaho murder victims Kaylee Gonsalves and Maddie Mogan alive. In an exclusive conversation with the driver, who asked to remain anonymous, he says he knows Maddie, Kaylee, and Xana and shared what he remembered about the ride, a drive he says he thinks about every single day. I have a very good memory, the driver tells News Nation. I wasn't followed. There was no one there. There was absolutely nothing strange about that street. It was just a normal night on Greek Row. He says Kaylee and Maddie were not nervous or apprehensive in any way. The driver turns himself into the police days later, sharing his GPS coordinates and alibi, critical evidence to prove his innocence.
Part 17 of the Who is Rebecca Schofield series is a major key as well.
Meanwhile, the very first lawsuit has been filed related to the quadruple murder. Rebecca Schofield, a professor at the University of Idaho, is suing TikToker Ashley Guillard for claiming she orchestrated the murders, hiring a student to sneak in and kill the 4 victims in their sleep. The TikToker, a self-proclaimed internet sleuth who uses tarot cards to solve crimes, has posted dozens of videos garnering millions of views from her 100,000 followers. In the lawsuit, Schofield's lawyers say her reputation has been tarnished and she has suffered extreme emotional distress from the constant public attention. And over the past few weeks, we've seen Moscow PD draw a hard line when it comes to spreading misinformation and false rumors. So I asked them whether or not they were aware of this civil lawsuit. They said they know about it, but at this point, they're not sure whether or not they plan to pursue criminal charges. Kelly?
All right, such a difficult story.
Passing rumors, rhetoric, lies. They're called lies. You do not know who killed these kids. Now we have a University of Idaho professor suing this female, as she should, because it's wrong. You don't know her. You don't know the kids. The lady has said she doesn't even believe she's had any of the kids in her classes. So this is why I said, what's the difference between this lady and Jack and Grubhub Hoodie? It's all the same. So one is no different than the other, the accusation. Because accusation is accusation. You claiming it, you put your name on it, you called out the government name. So, it's only preposterous because what? It's a woman. Well, women do sleep with other women. Women do like other women. But, it can't be true because it's a woman liking a woman and she hired a guy. Well, what's the difference between saying she did it, hired another person, versus an ex-boyfriend, a Grubhub patron, somebody from the bar did it, neighbor did it? It's all the same. Once you claim the name, it's still the same. Gossip is gossip. Lies are lies. The message is still the same. Next information pertaining to this diabolical crime. Could this become a cold case? Fox News is the source.
High-profile crime and murder mystery cases made headlines and took the world by storm. Dr. Michael Bonnin is a forensic pathologist and Fox News contributor and joins me to break down some of the most talked about cases. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's an unfortunate topic, but it's one that is on a lot of people's minds. And we want to start with the latest, the unsolved murder mystery of those 4 beautiful University of Idaho students. And we do have new body camera video from Moscow police, the police department there. It shows officers responding to a noise complaint, the house where the students were murdered, and spoke to victim Madison Mogan back in September. So take a listen to this.
All right, Madison. So here's the deal. Okay, they've already said that no one here lives. None of the occupants that live at this address are here right now. We just received a notice complaint. We want that music turned down, and we don't want to come back again tonight.
Oh, you did. I'm just frustrated. I was also sorry once again.
Does that have anything possibly to do with the case whatsoever? And what are your top line thoughts on this?
Well, I think it's now 6 weeks since the deaths occurred, and there's less and less information being given out by the police, and there's an issue raised in the social media that have been tracking the matter as to whether they're finding anything or they do have a lot of information that isn't being released. And I think there was an issue way back at the beginning that a neighbor heard a sound or a scream around the time of the murder. The murders occurred, but that's never been flushed out as whether or not it actually pertains to what happened about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning 6 weeks ago. I think the evidence thus far would indicate that whoever went into the residence and killed the 4 people, stabbed them with the same knife, knew the place, knew how to go up to the 3rd floor first. Apparently, it appears to be that one of the girls on the 3rd floor was a target and would have known the person. Then he went downstairs and had waken up the 2 people on the 2nd floor, stabbed them to death. The 2 people on the 1st floor, which is away from the other floors, were not touched and didn't hear anything. So right now, it's 4 unsolved murders 6 weeks later, and real fear.
It's a real mystery. And Dr. Bonnin, the families are understandably frustrated, and they want answers. Just quickly here, are you concerned that this could turn into a cold case?
More than 50% of murders now in the United States, we don't get this from the television shows, become cold cases, don't get solved. So that has to be kept in mind.
Unbelievable statistic.
But there should be a lot of information available at the scene and a closed community, so it doesn't look like it'll become a cold case.
We also want to talk to you about Eliza Fletcher. She's 34 years old, a teacher in Tennessee. She was jogging, security camera footage caught her being kidnapped. She was later found dead. What do you know about this case, and do we know the motive behind her murder?
Well, what's interesting about the Fletcher death is that she's jogging, as she usually did. She's kidnapped, caught on a security video at the Tennessee University. Okay. And the next day, they find the perpetrator who's set for trial.
Right.
What happened, though, is another woman came forth and said about a year earlier, the same person had sexually assaulted her, raped her. She went right to the hospital. They got a rape kit. And if they had analyzed the rape kit at that time, they would have. They knew who it was. She knew who it was. They would be able to catch him, and he wouldn't have been out and would not have killed him.
Absolutely
so
tragic.
There's a lawsuit going on from that woman.
Yeah.
And stresses the backup in rape kits that are not analyzed.
There's also the Delphi murders. This is Abigail Williams and Liberty German, 13, 14 years old, beautiful little girls. They were found stabbed to death in 2017. And just a few months ago, a 50-year-old named Richard Allen was arrested for their murder. So this is a situation where it does show that sometimes it takes a long time for a break in the case.
Yeah, Richard Allen worked in a pharmacy right in the community in Delphi, Indiana. And it's not clear why it took them 5 years to arrest him, since there was a lot of evidence at the scene, including an iPhone video that one of the teenagers had taken.
And it said there was a voice capture on it saying "down the hill." So
yes,
you had audio of him as well.
Audio and a grainy photograph, and it took 5 years, and he's set for trial next month, I think.
Dr. Bonin, it's a tough topic, but it is the reality of the world that we live in, and we thank you so much for joining us this morning.
All right, everybody. Fox News is the source. Very interesting information. Will this case go cold? Interesting that Eliza Fletcher's case is mentioned, because this is one of the cases that has haunted me for a few months now, because it gave me pause. Right here in the great state of Tennessee, where I live, the bottom part of the state, Memphis, Tennessee, a lady snuffed out, kidnapped violently on camera. Grace of God, this lady out and about at the hours possibly when these kids were killed. Interesting. She's jogging on a campus. These kids are college students. They're killed off campus in their own house sleeping. This lady's killed on the campus jogging in the wee hours, in the witching hour. Some would say it's a very dangerous time to run. Memphis has a lot of high crime. Wouldn't be jogging anywhere in Memphis. It doesn't matter about the neighborhood, the demographic. There's crime in the city. And I wouldn't have jogged, but that was her choice. But what's baffling, under street lamp cameras, she was seen being abducted, put into the vehicle, things left behind at the scene. The perpetrator came out of his shoes. So you have now DNA. They found her and they found him. The sick part is that he had raped someone a year before, an African-American female, and her rape kit was sitting on the shelf. And had they done the rape kit in a timely fashion, Eliza Fletcher will be alive today. Then you hear about the Delphi crime. 5 years goes by. This man is right there in the town working. Possibly a pharmacy tech. Cashier, whichsoever. I don't know. But the point is, he was close by. 5 years. I believe I watched brief content that they got a make on him, but I'm not for sure when exactly. So I'd like to know, when did they get a make on the suspect? Possibly they didn't have any evidence, because a grainy picture is not enough. You need a visual, facial of a person. So it's just a crazy case. 1 in 50% not solved. Yes. That is not good. So you need people who know their craft. Detective work, state police. You need people that know their craft. I don't question the FBI, because I know these people are trained. They have more training. They have more tools to use in finding people, tracking people. We're in a digital age now, so it's easier to be tracked now, because you leave a blueprint every time you go outside. Even if you don't take your phone, you're spotted somewhere. Little did you know, somebody has a bullseye view, saw you doing something. It doesn't matter if you were bending over, picking up the newspaper, you went into the grocery store, you went to get something to eat, you're in traffic. There are cameras everywhere. So hopefully digital data is helping this case, especially if they have an idea of who the suspect is. The digital will most definitely help, because the person had to walk or drive to the crime scene. And there are doorbell cameras in that area. That is how allegedly the timeline came about for when the two girls came home. And we also have a ride share driver. He'd have to clock in when he pulled up and dropped the girls off as well. The Eliza Fletcher case haunted me because it was so brutal what he did to her. The kidnapping, taking her in a nearby parking lot. They said the car sat there for about 4 minutes. Then he takes her to an undisclosed abandoned house, does whatever he does to her, kills her, dumps her, then goes up to his brother's house, which is right up around the corner from the crime scene where he dumped the body, cleans up. He's on camera there, cleaning out the car the next morning. Just craziness. Stupidity, ignorance, and craziness. Sadism. Didn't care. But they got him on camera. And naturally, they go to the house, the apartment, the brother and the girlfriend, they're talking. They're not trying to be implicated in a murder. And then the brother's a drug dealer. How about that? So now he's caught up just from fooling with his brother. His brother coming there. Naturally, to wash up, change clothes. Girlfriend somebody saw, bloody shirt, bloody items. See, there's always somebody that knows something, sees something. It's a matter, will they speak? So does somebody have an idea about the perpetrator? Did he cut himself? Did he come home too late? Did he borrow somebody's car? Imagine had he borrowed somebody's car and they've dumped the car, sold the car, repainted it, and they're wondering what the hell's going on. But they're too scared to talk. See, we don't know. A lot of questions, no answers. Praying that they do have answers. Law enforcement. Fox News was that source. Now Fox News has more information on the TikToker being sued. I will upload that information to my community page. Thank you all so much for following the content. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $McAngie, 129 Cash App, stickers and chats are welcome during this live stream. Top discovery so far. Law and Crime Network.
But we still ask for your help. We ask for any tips that you might have, anything that you might be able to give us. We're going to take a look at those.
We go over some of the biggest discoveries in the continuing investigation into the University of Idaho quadruple murder case. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber.
Maddie has such a bright future, as all these kids did. The world is a darker place without them, but the light of their love and memories will always guide us all.
Here, this is Maddie's father speaking at the memorial. The wife beside him, Maddie's mom. When you see this picture of the parents standing there, my goodness, Maddie looks just like her mother. I mean, to a T. Scary, very scary. But naturally, we resemble our parents to some degree. But she looks identical to her mother here. The mother and father standing here speaking about their daughter. Maddie looks just like her mother. Both tall, thin, blonde hair. She looks just like her mom. It's a very sad situation. I will continue this content. Thank you all so much for joining me. Happy holidays, everybody. Law and Crime Network is the source.
Will always guide us all.
At the time of this recording, we still have no arrests, no identifiable suspect, and no recovered murder weapon in the University of Idaho quadruple murder case. This is the killings of 21-year-old Kaylee Gonsalves, 21-year-old Madison Mogen, 20-year-old Zana Kernodle, and 20-year-old Ethan Chapin. This all happening back on November 13th. Their bodies were found in their off-campus rental home. Now, while we don't have these major breakthroughs that we're all hoping for, there have been some significant discoveries in this case that we want to talk about. And the first one of the major discoveries is the house itself, because we learned where the victims' bodies were found and presumably killed. I'm talking about the third and second floors. But that's not all, because we also learned that the 4 victims were not the only ones in that house. That's right. 2 roommates were on the ground floor that very night, and they were not harmed in any way. So that brings up some very interesting questions. For example, why weren't they attacked? Where did the killer or the killers enter from? What was the order of the killings? How did the killer or killers escape the house? And how did these roommates not hear anything?
Well, we don't know where they entered. We don't know if they entered through the front door or the second story slider that goes into the kitchen. Just from law enforcement reports and video, they're spending a lot of time at the sliding glass door. Looks like they're throwing some fingerprint dust on there, maybe some other chemicals on there to see if they can find any kind of evidence of blood or fingerprints. But I didn't really see them spending a whole lot of time on that front door, so they could have entered up to the backside where there's a tree line. But right now, there's no reports on which way they did enter. There's a ladder on the side of the house people have been talking about. We don't know if that ladder was there before, if it was used to get entry somewhere else. It's unknown at this time. It's all speculation.
Now, the roommates have been ruled out as suspects, but what we also know is that there was this 911 phone call that was placed by either one or both of the roommates the next day. It's possible there were other people there as well. That 911 phone call hasn't been released, so we don't know what the contents of it are. We don't know what was said. It's definitely going to provide a lot more details for us to understand. But it should be noted that when we talk about communication, the authorities have had a mess with communication. They were back and forth on whether the students were the target of this attack or the house was the target, and that was between the prosecutor's office and the Moscow Police Department. But speaking of communication, another big discovery or revelation in this case was how these people died. And that is that they were stabbed to death, which, if anyone knows, is very different from shootings. Stabbings are up close, they are intimate, and many times, and as we've seen it here on the Law and Crime Network, it's arguably personal. Now, I'm not entertaining any speculation at that point, but this is what we have to think about with this kind of attack. And what's also been reported that some have had defensive wounds, indicating that they may have fought off the attacker or the attackers, which creates a number of different questions in terms of forensics and DNA and what was left behind at the crime scene or on the attacker or attackers. As I mentioned, no murder weapon has been recovered, but it has been indicated that this was a sharp, fixed blade weapon, presumably a knife. There was even reporting that it was possibly a K-bar style knife.
And the type of knife that they're talking about is the United States Marine Corps K-bar. So when I saw this, my thought is this person prior military? So the specific weapon, if they're talking about a K-bar, which is what this is, then there's a possibility that they need to look into military background of some kind.
I should tell you that the general manager of a building supply store in Moscow told the media that the police had asked him whether he sold anyone K-bar brand knives, but police indicated that they aren't solely looking for that type of knife. Now, things took a very interesting turn when it was reported that by the coroner, Kathy Mabbitt, that she spoke with the Gonsalves family about these autopsy findings. And that's when we heard from Stephen Gonsalves, Kaylee's father, that the wounds were different than Maddie's, that Kaylee's wounds were different from Maddie's, perhaps more excessive. And if that is true, it again makes you wonder whether Kaylee was the target. But this created drama as well. The coroner describing the gruesome details became a particular point of issue with the Gonsalves family attorney.
I have issues with the coroner.
Brief intermission. Sorry about that. This is their lawyer speaking that they've hired an attorney now.
I have issues with the coroner. Number one, expressing all of her opinions over the media at, I think, at the inappropriate times, number one. Number two, making a personal phone call and describing graphic details of what she discovered and what she to the family. I don't think it was beneficial in any way. I don't think she did it out of a place of spite. I think she did it because she was, trying to give them more details. But once you hear certain details, it's not helpful to the family.
Another big discovery in this case was the release of the body cam footage from the night of the murders. This became a very big topic of conversation amongst people online about what this video shows, or maybe I should say maybe shows. So in the body cam footage, officers stopped students for possible underage drinking. This is unrelated to what happened to the victims, but this stop is actually occurring near the house. And as the officers are writing up these students at around 3:12 a.m., you can see in the far right-hand corner by this little light what appears to be people moving quickly away. Are they joggers? Are they running? Who are they? It's not clear. Now, those online have speculated that these could be the killers, but again, pure speculation. But that is not all, because then you hear this weird, high-pitched sound, and some have wondered if it was a scream. We don't know what that is. We don't. It could be a car. It could be a voice. We just don't know. It is interesting because authorities believe that the murders happened sometime between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. And why this is also important is because a neighbor of the victims came out and he said that he might have heard a scream on the night of the murders.
So I heard a car shut, a door shut, and then apartment door shut, and also a scream. But that's normal. I always hear screaming almost every Saturday night. So I didn't really think of it. And so, but just looking back, I was I wonder if that wasn't just some drunk dude screaming. It's actually the murder.
As we look back at some of the major discoveries in the Idaho murder investigation, we have to talk about some other footage. So let's do a little bit of a summary here first. We know that Ethan and Zana were at a party at the Sigma Chi fraternity house that night, which is actually not too far away from the house in question. They didn't get home until around 1:45 a.m. As far as Madison and Kaylee, they reportedly went to a bar. Then they were seen on footage going to a food truck at around 1:40 a.m., and they got back home at around 1:56 a.m. But in released footage, you can hear Madison and Kaylee walking and talking down the street about this person named Adam.
What did you say to Adam?
So Kaylee says, Maddie, what did you say to Adam? To which Madison replies, I told Adam everything. Now, the Gonsalves family came out and said that they believe that this Adam is a bartender at a local pub and indicated that police ruled this person out. And also, the guy that they're walking with in that video, he's been ruled out as a suspect as well. So again, this doesn't appear to further the case, but either way, just how incredibly eerie and chilling to see these girls only a few hours before they were killed. But I think the most appropriate place to conclude is arguably with the biggest discovery in this case, and that is the white Hyundai Elantra. You see, the police have asked the public's help in identifying a 2011-2013 white Hyundai Elantra that they believe was near the crime scene at the time of the murders.
We have many tips that have come in on the 2011 to the 2013 Hyundai Elantra. But what we're asking is anybody else who still hasn't sent in a tip, if you own one or if you know somebody who's driving one the day before or the day after, to please send that tip in.
Through our tips, through our leads, some of the evidence that came in, we start to identify patterns. And like we said earlier, we are confident that the occupant or occupants of that vehicle have information that's critical to this investigation. We also understand that even though there's sometimes a fascination with a particular case, some people simply don't see the news and may not know that we're looking for it. So if we get the word out there, hey, maybe your neighbor has one in the garage that they don't drive very often. Maybe there's one that's just not on the registration database. Let us know. So far, we have a list of approximately 22,000 registered white Hyundai Elantras that fit into our criteria that we're sorting through. That's an awful lot of information, but it may not be all of them.
Now, it was reported that a car matching that very description was found in Eugene, Oregon. It was abandoned on the side of the road. It sustained considerable damage, but after further investigation, it was discovered that the car was registered out of Colorado, and it was involved in a crash, and it is believed that neither the car nor the owner are connected to the murders. So as of now, the public is encouraged to still come forward if they have very pertinent, relevant information. In fact, anyone with information is asked to call the tip line at 208-883-7180 or email tipline@ci.moscow.id.us, and digital media can be submitted at fbi.gov/Moscow, Idaho. And that's all we have for you here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
All right, everybody. That's Law and Crime Network. A lot of interesting information pertaining to this crime. No suspect, no weapon. Yes, we are just an hour and 31 minutes into this live stream. Thank you for joining me. A lot to go over pertaining to this crime. I'm going to take a brief intermission, and then I will return in just a second to bring you my commentary pertaining to the ex-boyfriend. It's the killer living nearby. Please go to the YouTube queue to watch the virtual tour of the street, because perhaps the killer lives on the street or visited one of the homes there. Because when you see the house behind the property, it's enclosed in a fence. The perpetrator will have a bullseye view of the back of the house, which I would assume where the noise would emulate from if the kids were gathering on all 3 floors or one of the floors with the windows and glass sliders open. Is this about a noise complaint? What is the truth pertaining to the deaths of these 4 individuals? 1 second. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your patience. Is there a profile of this killer? Will they be apprehended? The white Alondra, is it a witness or the perpetrator? What is the significance of this car? Many people are asking these important questions. I will give you my assessment of this diabolical crime that took place November 13th. If you have any information, please call 208-883-7180 with tips. 17,000 tips so far as of today. No known stalker verified of Kaylee Gonsalves. 250 interviews exacted. Said persons. This commentary this evening is pertaining to the ex-boyfriend by the name of Jack DeCure. His aunt, Miss Miller, has spoken to the New York Post to say that he is heartbroken over the death of his ex-girlfriend, hoping that they would have had a life together. He and others thought the same, but they are not together. They broke up for whatever reason. You're entitled to believe whatever you want pertaining to when they broke up, who broke up with whom, if you believe he's the killer. I do not speculate on the killer. I've said that many times since covering this case on my network, and I do not know who killed the kids because I don't know the kids. There are too many dead people for me to assume who killed them, why, and the motive. I just bring you the information pertaining to what is being revealed. By a reliable source, not gossip and innuendos. Let's start with this 911 call that happened months beforehand. Is it relevant to this case? As I said, please take the virtual tour of the street via Google in my library, because perhaps the killer lives close by. This is a two-part live. Does the killer live nearby? Was it a neighbor, neighbor's friend, family member, visitor? Who is the killer? Or is the killer known in the inner circle of the four? Was Ms. Gonsalves the target or not? Did the others happen to be collateral damage? That makes no sense because two were left behind. So when you say those who believe this, oh yeah, they didn't want the two on the bottom. Well, then what did Xana and Ethan have to do with the situation? So that's why you can't say who's the killer and why he or they killed whom fought back, whom got the most wounds. As they say, you can get more wounds because you fought back. You were trying to preserve your life. So you're going to have more wounds. You're kicking, you're waving your arms. So you're going to have more wounds. And that's going to infuriate the perpetrator. Did that not occur to anybody? I want this person dead, and they're not trying to die. They're not trying to go willingly. They're not trying to surrender. They were warned by the police that police did not want to have to return. And you hear Maddie saying she was so sorry, confused, I guess, to what was going on. Some people said she's pretending not to be the person that lived there. The odd thing about this commentary is that the police is saying the person who called says the occupants here don't live here. That is a very strange statement because I have to ask myself, did the person who called, did you assume that they didn't stay there? What would draw you to that conclusion that the noise is coming from people that did not live in the house? See, this sounds personal to me. Stay woke now. See, the queen listens a lot. Unlike some people who don't listen to the information and just assume wild theories. See, I don't assume wild theories. I listen first. And I'm listening to what the officer's saying. And something about the commentary from the officer's mouth doesn't sound right. So one would have to ask, how many times has he or other officers been to that house with those same people living there with noise complaints? Number two, how many people were in the house at the time of this police video body cam? What did the person mean the occupants are not there? So it's as if somebody knew who was there and saying they've got other people there. So that's why it didn't make any sense when somebody was on social media saying Maddie's pretending to be somebody else and not saying she lived there. Well, I didn't hear that. Maybe they didn't show all of the video of the body cam, but something's off about this information. So did somebody call out of spite and say there's people there that aren't supposed to be there, as to get the people in trouble? Because you don't know the motivation behind when people call the police on people. Somebody could be in the right by calling, you're disturbing the peace, you're causing a problem, I can't sleep. But then there's also ulterior motives than just noise. So who called the police in that vicinity? You have two houses to the left. One's in the back that's in the fence. There's one directly across from the driveway. Their door faces their parking lot. You have neighbors across the street. I gave you an area view of those houses. And then you have the apartment building to the right with the drive that goes up the side of the house. Use your imagination on who called. Thank you, Cookie. Thank you so much. Who called the police? Stay woke. Was this a situation that escalated by another neighbor who was tired of listening to the girls' party? Now, on that night, we do not hear that they had a gathering of people, persons. So why on this night did the girls not have a gathering? How many times did they gather through the weekend? How many times were people coming over? How many times did they play loud music? Was it only on the weekends? Stay woke, everybody. Allegedly, the girls who survived were supposed to have been out of town. We don't have a recollection or information of when they actually returned. So what time did the two girls return? And did they go out of town together or separately? What time did they enter into the house on that fateful morning of the 13th or the 12th? See, I pay attention. Because all that rumor and rhetoric, making up stuff about who did it and why, as you can see, the possibilities are endless, considering, as Brian Eden has said, they live in a dense neighborhood. So pick a box of who the killer could be. Come on now. Because see, you want to choose the obvious person, somebody that broke up with somebody. No. Maybe not. Maybe somebody just got damn tired of hearing radios and boom boxes and Bluetooths go on the weekend and through the night, and people drinking and having too much damn fun, and I ain't having no fun. See, you don't know. And this is what I keep trying to tell you. You do not know the victims. Because the victims could have irritated someone, pissed somebody off. You know, people do die for various reasons. Altercations, arguments, disputes. So half the girls had disputes with any of the neighbors over noise or any other type of discrepancies. Did that not dawn on any of you? Because I'm not here to victim shame, because as I said, I don't know any of these children, but you can lose your life over a dispute. It has happened many times. Neighbors have killed each other, argued, done spiteful, evil things. So then you have to ask yourself that question as well. Has any other mishaps happened at this address, such as nasty letters, notes, anything dropped off at the house that would be deemed unsanitary? Well, I don't know, Canadian Cookie. You can't say that because we don't know who the killer is. You can't say that it wasn't a neighbor. You cannot say that. It was easy. Obviously, somebody walked in her house and killed them. So it was easy. So what's the difference between a neighbor versus somebody around the corner? Explain to me, how's it different? They still had to get in the house. Their doorbell camera's there at that peripheral. And obviously they didn't care about people having cameras. So if it's so easy, yes, then they should be caught then, huh? That's the point. Somebody walked in that house and didn't care. We don't know if they were in disguise or not. Somebody could actually have them on camera going into the house, but they were in disguise. Do not know if there were cameras inside of the apartment, hidden in the house or in someone's room. But if a person wore a disguise, how are you going to know who it is? Then they'd have to go by the build of the person. How he stood, how he acted. Did he talk? Did he speak? Did the girls yell out a name? Once again, how would somebody know that the noise coming out of the house are not from the occupants? That means you'd have to have been watching the house. So that's the building to the right, the house to the side on the left-hand side, which is where I believe Jeremy lives, one of those houses, and the house that's enclosed in the fence. Stay woke. Because that's a very odd thing to say. The occupants aren't there. Then how would you know the occupants aren't there? You'd have to know. Or as I just said, somebody knew that they had a gathering and maybe they weren't invited or had a problem with the neighbors in general and called out of spite. And if you're facing the house, looking out your apartment window, house window, or the back of that apartment building that faces their driveway, you still would have to know who's who and whose car is who to say, oh, those people don't live there and they're noisy. Stay woke. See, I pay attention. How many complaints have they received since living in the house? Same person, different people. How long have all of them lived in the house? Have they all lived in the house at the same time? Was this a vendetta when that call went into the 911 against one person or more? As I said, if you're in the back of the house, you can't see who's coming in the front of the house. Same thing with being in the front of the house, facing the house. How do you know who's in the back making the noise? As I said, you'd have to be watching the house to say who's there, not there. Or you have to be outside watching to see who's going in and out of the house. Something's very strange about that 911 call. You'd have to know the girls personally to say who was at that house during this 911 call, to say that the occupants did not live there. Once again, was it called out of spite? Does the killer live close by, next door, across the street? You see, if you live across the street, you have a bullseye view of who's coming and going out of the house. And you get to know the people by face and by car. Bingo card. If you lived in the back of the house, which is a house that's in the fence, you can't see the front of the house, or can you? So that means I need a view of that house that's in the fence to see, do they have a view of the cars? I don't see how they can have a view of the front of the house. And if you lied in wait in the back, how do you know who's pulling up at the front of the house? So that means if you came from the back entry, either from that apartment building to the right, the house that's in the back in the fence, or up from Walenta through the woods, how would you know who is in the house? Stay woke. Yes, the killer's possibly close. And maybe that visual I showed you on that street of the 3 white cars in front of that one house, could that be the witness or perpetrator's car? And they would have a bullseye view of the house. Stay woke. Because when you look at my video of the tour of that street, there are 3 white cars sitting in that parking lot before you get to their house on the right-hand side. And I was trying to do a little digging of different types of Hyundais and Hyundai, GTS, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I can't make it out. I'm not no car expert. But it struck me strange. 3 white vehicles in that parking lot to the right. Google search, and Google has covered up their house that has the 3 white cars. Stay woke, because maybe somebody said something about those cars there. Exactly. Been there. The killer might live right nearby. By now, the tip would have come in about the white car being on that street or being a neighbor's car, I would assume. Where did the tip come from once again? And if one of the kids' associates owned a white Elantra or one of their friends' family members owned a Elantra, by now, once again, that information would be on Ellie's desk. Someone's mentioning that one of the boys had a friend that had a car, blah, blah, blah. Anybody with common sense knows Ellie is probably already checking those that said information out of anybody known to the kids with a white Elantra. Once again, is this a suspect or a witness? You do know that an old tactic of law enforcement is to tell the general public that it's a witness when indeed it's not a witness, it's the suspect, as was done with the DC sniper. They put out information pertaining to a vehicle, but all along it was not a witness that law officials were looking for in the DC sniper case. They basically were handing you the killer on a silver platter, but they just didn't tell you the truth. They wanted you to think the person was an eyewitness when indeed it was the killer whose information they were releasing to the general public. Is this what is happening in this case? That the suspect is driving the Elantra, not a witness. Is the car owned by the suspect, or was it stolen, rented, disposed of, painted, or hidden? Where is the car now, and what is the relevance? Suspect or witness? Getaway car. Dump, set on fire. Where is the car? If somebody loaned the car, had their car stolen, will they call the police and tell them the truth that they know the person that they loaned the car to? And why hasn't the person who owned the car come forward? That is very important, because you would know out of common sense, the right thing to do would be to come forward and say, yes, I own an Elantra. I was in that general area on the 12th, the 13th, the 14th, whatever, and just get it over with. But the only reason why you would not call is if indeed you are the suspect, or you took somebody there, dropped them off, picked them up, Ubered them there, Ubered them back, whichsoever. You have some involvement with the crime, either conspired with the person, you are the person, or you gave them a ride. You dropped them off, or they borrowed your car. Which is it? Jack, the ex, will not mention his name. Try not to mention his name again, because I do not like the things that are unfolding pertaining to the harassment of these people that know the victims. His life is ruined, don't you think, at this point? You all are assuming he's the killer. You've changed the killer. Every day you get information, you change the killer. Make up your mind. Who is it? First, it's the heavyset guy at the grub bus. Then it's the hoodie guy. Then you get information that he was walking with the kids. Now you feel stupid about that. Then it was Jack. Then it was Paul. Then it was this one, that one. Then it was Jeremy. Then it was the rideshare guy? He's been eliminated. Then you got a guy hearing a scream, but yet he didn't hear a scream when he first went to social media. Woo, he acts weird. He's quirky. Now we've got an Idaho professor linked into it by a psycho black woman who doesn't have anything better to do than play with tarot cards, which is very dangerous indeed. Doesn't matter what the Uber driver was driving. They said he's been cleared. So how about we just accept that for right now? Because if you are an Uber driver or any type of ride share, you're being clocked in moment for moment, unless you lose Wi-Fi connection. His aunt has spoken, Miss Miller, that this man is heartbroken over the death of this girl who he thought he was going to be with. Is it possible that he's scared for his safety? Do the Gonzalez still talk to him, conversate with him? Are they leery of him now because of all the gossip? Could it be that they made a mistake about this Jack person? What about the other people who are close to him? Do they suspect him as being the killer? Ellie has checked them out. Have they? Thoroughly? Body Did they take photographs of him with his shirt off, clothes off, pants off, hands? Does he have a violent record or rapport with other people, women, girlfriends? Was he ever violent with Kaylee'S Gonsalves or any of her friends? Did he ever threaten her? Did he ever threaten anyone? Will he return to school or transfer or go to school online? It's all a cesspool, Amy. YouTube, Twitter, anything where you can give your opinion and go on and on and on is a damn problem. Does the killer live close by? Has he been watching the house because he has a bullseye view of the house? Did a killer kill these kids? Was the car parked in a parking lot or its designated place where it's been parked because the killer lived nearby? But then they say a landlord gave footage about a car. So what was it so special about the landlord giving this car to law enforcement? What was the car doing for a landlord to say, here's footage of the car? Was it driving by, going by? Then they said it wasn't really going fast. So what is the truth about this car and the person who gave up the tip? Once again, did they get somebody to hurt the girls out of maliciousness, anger, revenge? I always kept saying, could you see the house from different parts, different views? Well, I brought you a virtual tour by Google. Standing at the corner of King Road, you can see the house. No trees are blocking the house. You would have a bullseye view of any of the girls hanging on the top balcony, laughing, smoking cigarettes, whatever kids do. And you wouldn't even have to be nowhere near the house. Stay woke. See, a killer could have just been going by, driving in the neighborhood for God knows whatever reason. FedEx driver, delivery driver, Uber driver, rideshare driver, coming to see a friend, homeboy, relative, and get a glimpse of blonde hair sitting on a porch. And then we're curious, so let's drive by. Stay woke. Drive up that hill. Sit up at the parking lot, look down through the trees. Now that there are no leaves, you have a better view. Now, I need binoculars and a telescope. I can see better what I'm looking at. You all better pay attention. So we now know that you can see the back of that house, even from the corner where the street sign is. So you don't even have to be right close proximity to the house. But in order to make your move, you're going to have to be closer to the house. Stay woke. You're going to have to get a better bullseye view of the house. But as I said, who better to watch the house than somebody across the street, to the right of the house in those brick apartment buildings, the back of the house that's inside of that fence, and the house that sits directly across the parking lot with their doors and windows facing their driveway. Survivors, a Miss Dillon and a Miss Bethany. Why are these two people alive? Because the killer killed Xana in the second bedroom, which is around the corner from the kitchen. You have to pass that low-bearing wall, and even in the dark, you would know that would go down to the bottom level. So what are the odds? The killer didn't want to kill or look farther downstairs. Allegedly, the door was open. So the killer would know that somebody lives downstairs, because there are two rooms down there, plus a bathroom and a laundry room, from my understanding. So you're not going to be curious to who's in those rooms and could have heard you. You didn't go check the door handles. If indeed you did go out of the front door, pay attention. Even if the killer watched this house, the killer still would know about the front facade if he came from the back. And I'm going to say it again. If he watched from the back, how does he know who's all in the house unless he went around the front to see what cars are parked in the driveway? You will still have to watch the front of this house. Is this really a party house? What do you call a party house? I know that many people use party for different things. I use party meaning going to a party to dance, have fun. But I learned in certain realms, people call a party house a place where that's a party meant to get high on drugs. Now, I don't know anything about that, but I've heard a lot of white people use that word party. So I had to be careful in saying, "Ooh, I like the party," because then they're thinking you mean getting high on cocaine or something. No. In my black folks world, we didn't use party for that. So I have to wonder now when they say party house, are you also now saying, are you specifying this was a drug house or a party house just where kids party, had fun and drinks? I'm confused because different races use party for different analogies. So I want to make that clear in this live stream. What did party really mean? And so far, drugs have not been introduced into the storyline. Selling, using, you're entitled to your interpretation. Something is off to me about this 911 video they're releasing. Did the music complaint escalate into murder? 2 girls with a target, but 2 left alive intentionally? Did the 2 survivors not mingle much with the girls in the house? Xana, Maddie, Kaylee. Allegedly, Kaylee's leaving. So what is the truth to that? I need verification from the police and not gossip. This could be personal indeed. If the killer lives right close by and been watching, and especially if he or she or they had a problem with the girls making too much damn noise, and on this fateful day, somebody decide to come in and handle their business. And what's even more interesting, if I'm to believe that Kaylee is the target, she was leaving. Something is still off with that. Allegedly, she was gone for 2 weeks or so, if I'm to believe that rumor. So, what have you been doing? Just watching the house, waiting for Kaylee to return with a new car? As somebody said, why not kill the person out in the street? Why would you wait to kill him at the house? She had to go to work. She had to go to school. She had to go to the mall. See, a lot of you don't pay attention. You're not paying attention to what's obvious. There's something off here. People calling about people partying that don't live there, which that sounds orchestrated and deliberate. Months beforehand. Kaylee's the alleged target, but she just so happened to just pop back up at the house with her dog and new car. Come on now. That's why I said if I'm watching the house, I would know that Kaylee didn't live there. Come on with it, Queens. They don't pay attention. The killer watching the house and his target moved out. So if I've been watching the house and I know the person I want ain't there, wouldn't I stop watching the house? Maybe there's more to this story than what's being assumed. This is why you have to pay attention to the details. Not the gossip, but the details. See, one gossip is she moved out. So that's not been verified by police. Nothing's been verified. I think you all should be reading between the lines. There's a reason why the rumors are not being verified by the police. Because the police says, come on with it, Queen, because they don't like to listen. I can't verify to you what you keep hearing on Facebook, because then the killer will know we know who he or she is. Ding. Say it again, Queen. The police won't verify to you who was moving, who got a new car, this and that, who left, who came with a dog, left the dog in the house while they went and partied. That don't make no sense. And kill her the day she just popped back up. Ask yourself, does that make any sense? CCTV footage. Moscow wants you to call if you saw anything between the hours of 3 and 6 a.m. November 13th. Why? Is it because you know that she was talking to on her phone 252 Kaylee Gonzalez, trying to reach this jack person that allegedly didn't respond by picking up or text messages? He says he was asleep. Once again, another rumor, because I haven't heard it from him, so to me it's a rumor. 3 to 6 a.m. Anybody with footage in the general area? Very interesting. December 7th, we get information about this white Elantra. December 20th, we learned that a car was found crashed in Oregon, another state. Also happened to be same town where one of the girls was born. No relation. Female owns the car. Police tell you to leave her alone. Don't stalk her. She has no involvement in the crime. But is it possible that perhaps she loaned her car to somebody? Ding! Maybe she didn't drive to Moscow, even though it's 7 hours away. It's a mighty long way to go kill somebody. But what if somebody was just in town looking for a victims, and they used her car or somebody's car? Because that is a possibility that the killer used somebody's car to exact a crime, such as in the Eliza Fletcher case. He used the girl's car that he was living with, her SUV, to kill Eliza Fletcher. I don't have to drive my damn car to go kill anybody. That would be stupid, would it not? Stay woke. But how planned is this? Because he's not caught. So perhaps he was smart, the killer. He did plan this. He did orchestrate this crime. So you have to ask yourself, was this planned or spur of the moment on that day? Random, targeted house, targeted individuals, one target. Who is our killer and what was his motivation behind these brutal slayings? The sixth person's name on the list moved out earlier part of the year, allegedly, or the beginning of the school year. I don't really know what that means. Who is this person? Why did they move out of the house? Oh, did they graduate? Supposedly, where are they now? Moscow, out of town. Did they have beef with the girls? Is this a guy or a girl? The name is Cole. So are we speaking of the same person giving information about the stairs creaking and not being able to hear on the third floor? Or are these two other different people speaking? But I'm confused because one person lived there in 2019, I think, and gave commentary about not hearing noise on the third floor. Now we got this person named Cole, who I don't know if it's a girl or a guy, because Cole sounds like a guy name, but could be feminine. They moved out earlier in the year, so I want to know this person that last spoke to the news to say the stairs creak and you could hear people walking up and down the stairs. When did you last live in the house? Why did you leave the house? Did you graduate and then move out of the house? Were you on good terms with the girls when you left? Were you speaking to the girls the day of the death? I don't have time for this. That's why I'm trying to get an understanding, Callie. Because it looks like a whole lot of people are talking. Because first there was somebody that lived there years ago that speaks about you can't hear noise on the top floor. Now this person that was on the lease is supposed to move out the earlier part of the year. So what is early part of the year? January, February 22? Or what? Spring? And are they or were they on good speaking terms with the girls? And where did they live in the house? Bottom floor, second floor, or third floor? Did they have a good relationship with the girls before leaving? Could this be retribution? Left because there was a problem or didn't like the girls? Was leaving, planning to leave because they're graduating, but they didn't leave on good terms. And this is another question that nobody's mentions that I've heard on the news, News Nation, Law and Crime, or anybody. Who orchestrates the changing of the keypad lock? Because if this person left the early part of 22, is the keypad lock the same bingo card? Anybody listening out there? 202 in the room. Is the keypad lock from earlier in the year the same at the time of death of these kids? Because if so, it's no telling how many people have the keypad code. Shut your mouth. Because who's going to be the designated person to change the damn keypad code? Are you going to change it every time somebody moves out? And who is the person that changes it? You all don't even ask these questions. You're too busy worrying about a fucking dog and Jack and Jack and Jack. You should be asking obvious questions like, how many times has the keypad lock been changed? Who's supposed to change it? I'm going to say it one more time. How many times has the keypad to the front door been changed since January 22 up until November 13? How many people had the keypad code? Who is responsible for changing the code? See, that's what you should be asking. Are you worrying about a dog? It's irrelevant. The dog can't talk, so I don't dwell on nothing about a dog. What you should be asking is, who had access to the house? How many times keypad has been changed? The code. Who's changed it? How many times it's been given out for people to come in and out of the house? Workers, plumbers, electrician. See, you don't think about stuff like that. The girls get a leak, somebody's got to come in and fix it. How do you think they're going to get in if the kids are in class or at work? Stay woke. Do all the doors properly work or close? I'm going to say it one more time. The keypad has to be given out because somebody has to be able to enter into the house if they have to work on inside of the house. If someone has to work inside, the keypad would have to be given out. Come on now. The back sliders, did they work properly? Were they always locked from inside? Did the girls ever use them to go out of the house as their exit points? Is there security at this address, outside and inside? Any type of doorbell cameras or cameras? And if the girls were careless of giving out pads, keypad codes, and not locking the sliders, did they tell somebody this information? See, this is how you're going to find out who the killer is. Because as I keep telling you, you have to know the victims before saying who the killer is. You don't know the kids, you don't know who the killer is. When you learn who the kids are, that's when you'll figure out who the damn killer is. Two men at a business were flirting with this girl, Kaylee. Police found them. How did you find them? And where do they live? And what's the proximity where they live to the house? This could be stalkerish situation. But the police have verified that the two guys have gotten a pass. Have they really gotten a pass? What was really said that day? It's also said that one of the guys didn't make contact with Kaylee when she made it outside to her car. But I want to know, how did police find them both? Damn, this town is that small that they could find two random guys from a business, a store. Y'all better wake up. Queen is on top of her game. I know that cleared don't really mean cleared, because I'm the police and I can tell you what I want to tell you. So that's why the Gonsalveses don't need to be bickering and arguing with the police, because they can't tell you things, because they do not want any information leaked out. And due to the fact that Mr. Gonsalves and his family really have been the only ones talking to the news, hell no, I'm not going to tell you anything. Because maybe I already have an idea who killed the kids, but I have to get evidence to get an indictment. I can't just go arrest them because I think they did it, or people on social media think they did it. Because possibly the killer is somebody that nobody even thought of or mentioned, because he wasn't meant to be known. Because maybe he's not even known by the victims. Stay woke. And you've seen 1,000 crimes of the perpetrator not even knowing the kids from a can of paint. Yes, people break into houses that they do not know. People target houses because they think it's a house they can get into and see the people coming and going, and they watch the house to see when the cars are parked, when the cars leave. Stay woke. Check to see if there's a dog roaming in the back. Sometimes it is just a matter of a targeted house. They pulled up, they watched, they chose that house for whatever reason. And when you're dealing with a sadist, when you're dealing with a crook, their reason doesn't have to be explainable to you and make sense to you, because you are not that person. So it's not supposed to make any sense. Adam, the bartender, is cooperating with the police. I heard somebody say the other day, oh, that sounds strange to me. What's strange about it? If he's cooperating, it's because you all released a video and his name was mentioned, and you're going on and on and on about who he is. So why would he not cooperate? Don't you think he'd be stupid to not cooperate? So how's that suspicious? The police said he's cooperating. I would assume that all the people that they're talking to are cooperating. Help me understand why that's suspicious. You see, this is what happens when you just read anything into one comment. Oh my God, that's suspicious that he's cooperating. Well, damn, what would you say if he wasn't cooperating? Jesus, I don't understand. Rideshare driver mentioned. He's been cleared. Hoodie guy, cleared. Sister says she doesn't know, Miss Kaylee's sister, don't know who the target is, yet the dad says the wounds don't match Maddie's. No need for him to go up the stairs. What does this mean? And the sister was replying, according to information I got from, I believe that was the Independent, that 1 minute it's a target, then they take it back, disputing with the district attorney, disputing about the coroner speaking. So I don't understand you all's commentary. You're wondering why they're saying it was a target, then take it back. But yet you've cleared Jack, the ex-boyfriend, you and your family, allegedly. But then the father says, assumingly, the perpetrator didn't have to go up the stairs. So up the stairs where? Because we got 3 levels. So what are you speaking of? The killer didn't have to go upstairs. But that leads us to think that you thought maybe the killer was supposed to be killing somebody on the 2nd floor instead as the target. See? they're all contradicting themselves. And I have to keep bringing this up because it's a part of the storyline. This is what happens when you shouldn't be talking. The killer shouldn't go upstairs, but yet the wounds don't match Maddie's, which some are thinking you mean your daughter got it worse. Okay, so that makes no sense to say he shouldn't have went upstairs. Well, he did go upstairs because if she's the target, then that's why he went up there. But then the daughter said, well, we don't understand why they keep saying target, not target, but yet you all are acting like you think your daughter or sister was the target. So which is it? This is why it's not good to speak. And when you're dealing with true crime, this is why the police don't want people speaking to the news, to the media, for this very reason. Because your words as the family contradicts what you're saying to the public about wounds matching, not matching. Person shouldn't go up the stairs. That makes no sense. Yes, everybody's been contradicting themselves. Exactly. And it's not being mean to the family. It's just that you can't speak about something and then talk in riddles and circles and then say, well, I'm confused why the killer went upstairs. Well, if your daughter was the target, then that's why he went upstairs. This is strange to me. So I'm going to ask the family, do you believe Kay was the target or not? And why don't you just say it and be done with it? Instead of talking in circles and riddles. That way people will know you mean what you're saying. We also have this neighbor, not anonymous, but this crazy neighbor coming out saying he heard a scream. Well, that makes no sense because you went to social media 12 hours after the murders and said that you didn't hear anything. They don't have a suspect. They don't got this. They don't got that. But then you go talk to the news and you talk to this YouTuber for hours like you all are, on the Oprah Winfrey show. So how could you hear a scream and the roommates didn't hear a scream? And they live in the house. And it's the same house where a tenant says, oh, you can hear creaking up the steps. Steps creaking. So if a tenant used to live in the place says you can hear the steps creaking, it's an old house, then how would you hear a scream in one of the buildings to the right of the house? And then we got to ask, which apartment do you live in? Second floor, first floor, end of the building, front of the building. So how you could hear a scream? It's cold, windows are closed, doors are closed, but two people on the bottom floor didn't hear anybody screaming that night. Or did the girls hear something strange in the house and didn't wake up or get up to go inquire because they were scared? Maybe too scared to even call 911. I don't know. People do strange things. But I can bet your bottom dollar you would know a party versus somebody fighting. How about that? So no way I'm going to believe this bullshit about they thought the girls were partying. Nah, try again. You know damn well a scuffle versus a party. And I don't believe if those girls were up, they thought they were partying. I don't believe that. The neighbor Jeremy comes forward. Long-winded letters to social media, which made people start talking about him and assuming he was involved. He went down, talked deliberately, gave DNA deliberately to remove himself as a suspect. Once again, several, or let's say two roommates have talked about, two people who lived in a house have given commentary. Somebody from a few years ago gave commentary about you can't hear noise on the third floor, but maybe if you're loud on the second floor, you can hear. Then we've got commentary from a roommate from 6 months ago saying you could hear footsteps. So what is the truth? It's an open platform house. So I know you can hear what's going on the second floor, because that second floor probably ain't got but 10 or so steps from top to bottom. I'll go as far as saying maybe 10 to 13 steps. So I know damn well you can hear what's going on that second floor. Were the girls asleep that morning? Or were they too scared to go check the noises? Fell back to sleep. What's the truth? Who was up during the murders? Because Ethan was out of the bedroom, so that means Ethan was up. What was he doing? Was he getting something out the kitchen, using the restroom? What? Heard something? What? Kill first, kill second? What? Kill third? What? What's the sequence of the murders? How did the perpetrator enter? How did the perpetrator exit? Rumor about the door being open. Front door. Was it open? When the kids got up, found Ethan, came back out, did they tell police they noticed the door was open? Increased security in the spring. Well, you need security right now, Moscow Police Department, University of Idaho, because you got 4 dead kids who were students there, and you need to have your own police department like other major universities, because Moscow is not equipped for extra shenanigans in the city or the campus. And the fact that they police your campus, that's not good enough now that you've got a quadruple murder. Idaho University needs its own security company or police department. Rent college pads is where you can get the information of how the house looked many years before at 1122 King Road, if you need verification of what the house looked like before. It once had a garage sitting to the left of the parking lot. For those who did not know that, please go to my community board, or rather go to my library to check out the upload I gave earlier. Lot of craziness with this story. Was everybody checked that has been interviewed by Moscow Police, State, and FBI? Father frustrated with people being cleared. Alibis not mentioned. Mr. Gonsalves knows better. He knows they can't mention that to the public. Was this investigation properly done in the beginning? My understanding, day 1, day 2, FBI was called. So what's going to count is how the scene was processed. Day 1, hour 1. What is the clearing process for all persons of interest and anybody known to the kids? 250 plus have been talked to. Was everybody checked underneath their clothes, hands, back, wrists? Is there anybody that's known to the victims had cuts on their hands, arms? Will we ever find that out? Did they ask all participants to submit DNA? If they didn't, why not? And if they did ask people to submit, who declined to give DNA? Stalker claim dismissed by law officials, no verification. Interesting. The likelihood of 4 people murdered at the same time. Why? How did these kids live before death? One of the girls was passed out, the surviving roommates. That's what the 911 call is about. But what I'm speaking of in this content is the body camera footage that's been released pertaining to Maddie months ago of a noise complaint. The likelihood of 4 being murdered How did the kids live? How did they treat people? How did they get along with each other? Any of them have any legal trouble? How many suspect tips out of 17,000? Anybody have any differences? Neighbors, people that know them? Were any of the kids in any legal trouble or eyewitness to any legal issues, crimes? Naturally, no release of information as not to taint the investigation. Whole lot of information. Profile. Has a profile been rendered in this case? If so, what is the profile? Is it accurate? Exactly. Did the kids make enemies with somebody? Because if this is not somebody that's obsessed with one of the girls, incel, somebody mad at women, angry with women, somebody that can't perform sexually, somebody that thinks these girls weren't his type, or he wouldn't be their type, then what other killer is left but a serial killer, woman hater, or somebody that thinks the kids did something to them personally, spited them? Who is this killer? What was the motive? And I'd like to know, when are they going to release footage from the bar? Since Adam's name has come into play, since we hear the girls talking about Adam, when are you going to release footage from the bar to show the girls at the bar when they got there, how long they stayed, the time that they left? Or do you not have that footage? See, all these people names being brought up, a lot of it's just messiness. Because as I said, you don't know the victims. You don't know who they talked to. You don't know what all they did. You don't know who all their friends are, associates, people that liked them, didn't like them, who they fell out with, who they had an altercation with. You don't know anything. So it's crazy to just throw people names out there, because there's probably 1,001 people they had contact with and talked to, and you don't even know who they are. So why not mention their names? Because I'm sure the list is endless. Obviously, whatever happened from the bar to the grub bus wasn't really that important, because we now have information that this information was already known by the family. The video that's been released of the girls talking about Adam, so possibly it's nothing. He's cooperating, so maybe it's nothing. That's why it wasn't mentioned, why it wasn't talked about. Same thing with the grub bus. You now have information that you thought was so highly suspicious, the guy walked with them. So this is why you can't assume anything from video, because you're not right there up close watching people's interactions and conversations, if they're rolling their eyes, if they're sighing, if they're mumbling under their breath. And at the end of that video at the grub bus, this guy, hoodie guy, walks off to the right of the screen. The girls go around to the left of the screen. So you have to prove he knew where they lived, and how would he have followed them? You don't know where his car was. You don't know if he had a car. You don't know if he was on foot when he walked away. Same thing with anybody who was near the grub bus and the bars. How would they know where to follow them? How do you know they didn't live outside of Moscow? See, those are the questions you have to ask. Because my understanding is the campus is 0.9 miles away, which was about, I believe I pulled up 18 minutes on that apartment listing. So that's not around the corner. You have to have proof who knew them, knew their names, where they lived, able to follow them from anywhere that they were that night. You'd have to even know that they were even going home. That's why I didn't read anything into the grub bus. Because I said, you got to know where the cars are parked, if everybody was on foot or not. And how are you going to follow somebody if you don't even know how they got there? See, you got to make it make sense. Now that you got the second video of the girls walking with the same hoodie guy and talking about this Adam character, it doesn't look like it's nothing. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. The only way you're going to know if he's related is if he leaves a note and says he killed the kids. Then you still will want to prove it. Vicious. Well, Mama Bear, that's what was on the screen pertaining to the apartment complex. That's what was under it when it shows walking distance, driving distance. I wasn't trying to measure it. I just read it off. It's Google search, so go figure. TikToker being sued, making nasty allegations against an Idaho professor, university professor, saying she had relations with the girl and conspired with somebody else. Very nasty. I brought you content pertaining to a profile, News Nation. The Uber driver has spoken. Nothing suspicious on that night. The girls were in the car. All they were talking about was their food. So that would lead you to believe that there was no big deal about Hoodie Guy or Adam. Stay woke. Top discovery so far in the case, law and crime. Could the Idaho murder become a cold case? Fox News. I also have a poll pertaining to if a public investigator, private investigator should be involved. 44% of you said it would help. 14% said it would hurt. 42% you weren't sure. Should a private investigator be involved? Will it help or hinder? I brought you expert testimony that say some say help, some say not, depending on what will be told. But what I find interesting is that why would anybody talk to a private investigator knowing that he or she would turn over that information to the police? So if the police doubles back to come back to say, hey, I hear that you told the PI this, and then they say, well, no, that's not true, then how's that going to work in helping the investigation? And why even talk to a PI, as I just said, knowing he would turn that information over to the authorities if it was helpful. Then they say, well, sometimes people like to talk to people that aren't police. People are just scared to talk to the police. Well, if that's the case, then why talk at all? Strange. Let's see about that. Myth versus the truth. Talking to a private investigator. Do you think a private investigator would help? Let's check it out. Law and Crime Network is the source.
But we still ask for your help. We ask for any tips that you might have, anything that you might be able to give us.
Should one resource police use on the Moscow murder investigation include private investigators? I'm Anjanette Levy, and welcome to Law and Crime Sidebar Podcast. The idea of hiring a private investigator was first floated by Steve Gonsalves, the father of victim Katie Gonsalves. He was very frustrated with what he saw as a lack of progress in the investigation. You will recall that Kaylee and her roommates, Maddie Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Xana's boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, were all stabbed to death in the early morning hours of November 13th. It's been nearly 6 weeks since the homicides occurred. In that time, families have been pleading for information, but police have been keeping much of that information about the case from the public, which happens in criminal investigations. The family of Xana Kernodle sent out flyers this week pleading for anyone with information to come forward. The Moscow Police Department has enlisted the help of both the Idaho State Police and the FBI to solve the case. So should some of that help come from private investigators? Joining me to discuss whether or not hiring a private investigator for these families to investigate the murders themselves is TJ Ward. He is a private investigator. He's been in the business for 40 years. He has a website, tjwardpi.com, and is also the author of the new book, Guilt by Association. TJ, welcome to Sidebar. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much.
TJ, you're a former law enforcement officer. I'm sure as a law enforcement officer, you wouldn't want people digging around in your cases. I don't know that for sure, but what are your thoughts on this discussion, this idea about the family of Kaylee Gonsalves potentially, and I say potentially because we don't know if they've even done that, hiring a private investigator to investigate these murders?
Well, hiring a private investigator is probably an asset to the case because there's a lot of witnesses that we know that probably wouldn't want to talk to law enforcement, and what they would do is talk to somebody that's not associated with law enforcement, and we can gather information probably law enforcement wouldn't get, and we would build a case for them and turn it over to law enforcement.
When you were in law enforcement with Fulton County, would you have wanted a private investigator talking to witnesses for you or running a parallel investigation? Would you have not liked that, or what would your feelings have been about that?
I don't have a problem with a private investigator working a parallel investigation as long as they don't get into areas that might hurt the case or do something that may not be proper that we couldn't use in a court of law later on. And with my experience as a former law enforcement officer, I know what my boundaries are to be able to utilize information and get information for law enforcement to be able to use.
One thing that I thought you said was very interesting is the fact that there are probably witnesses in this case who may not feel comfortable talking to law enforcement. However, they may be more comfortable talking to someone who's not a sworn officer. They may feel like they can be more candid. Have you experienced that in your investigations?
Absolutely. That has happened before, and we build our cases. I build cases. I get hired by lawyers and private individuals and companies to build a case where it would be theft or whatever, and I turn my investigations over to law enforcement where they take it and use it in an indictment where I would testify as a professional to be able to testify in court from what information that I found and utilized in the case. Very important. And there are a lot of people that do not like to talk to the police. I mean, the police are the authority. It scares them when they may be a potential witness where they don't want to be. But talking to a private individual as myself, as a private investigator, they're a little bit more comfortable talking.
Sorry about that intermission. So, helpful or not? Private investigator.
For that is because, talking to a law enforcement officer, you could get jammed up. I mean, we've heard stories about this where they have arrest powers. The police have a lot of power, and I'm sure the officers in this case want to get it right. They want to get the right person. So, is that one of the reasons why people don't always feel comfortable talking to law enforcement?
That's correct. And it's just the authority that they have and the power that they have, as you mentioned. Law enforcement is a little bit different category, what they're looking for. And people are scared that they're going to get incorporated into a case that they don't want to get incorporated to.
Exactly.
They like to share what they know. It's the same way that they find cameras or...
Many people live by the snitch rule. So this is why many people do not call in crimes. People do not tell people that they were actually an eyewitness to a crime. Whether they were standing there when it happened or looked out the window, passed in a car, walked by on the street, because people don't want to testify. People do not want their name out there as being the witness to a crime because they know they have to go to court once they give information pertaining to a crime, pertaining to what was told to them by the perpetrator or co-conspirators. And if you live in a society, in a world where people don't snitch, don't tell anything, even if it's a crime, a gruesome crime, whether it's about a child, adult, that is some people's mentality. White, black, Hispanic, Jewish, Arab, all different races have this mentality of don't talk, don't tell anything, don't get involved, don't speak on anything. And yes, it can cause you problems by your neighbors, people in the community, relatives, friends of the people. What's going on right now on social media? People doxing people, people going to people's message systems, bothering them. Hey, he didn't do it. She didn't do it. Why are you talking? Why did you tell this? Blah, blah, blah. Why are you talking about it? This is why people don't like speaking publicly about crime, because of what's going on in this case. What went on in the Summer Wells case, Cal City Boys case, Debbie Collier case. They're all the same. Quentin Simon. People gossiping, making up stuff. People going in people's message boxes, asking them questions. Do you want to talk? Tell this, tell that. Why didn't you do this? You knew this. This is why people don't want to talk. Because they know eventually you're going to tell their name. You're going to tell what they told. You're going to record them. Even though people lie and say they're not recording them, usually they do. And then they turn on the people and play what they said in a conversation, and not caring about their livelihood or that they could get hurt, harmed, killed, murdered. People don't think about that. This is why people don't tell, especially in drug-related crimes, urban crime. People just say, I'll stay out of it. Because one, I don't want people to know I know anything or saw anything, and I don't want harm to come my way. But you would hope people do the right thing. And also, there has been no reward mentioned. Flyers are now being handed out by Xana's family, but I don't think the school wants the attention, nor does the police department, because the police department will feel like people will think this case is cold, and then the school, they're trying to run a business. And I think it's also interesting that they haven't offered up a reward. The school itself, it's very strange to me, and it's poor taste, because everything's about your perception. If you are a Debbie Downer, let's say, then all this is negative to you. The police are negative. The storyline's negative. But if you want to have a good outcome as far as the killer being caught, you're going to think positive. You're going to have faith, whether you're religious or not. But maybe a reward will make somebody talk. And that's sad that we live in a world where people only talk unless money is involved. But we do live in a society, as I just said, people believe in the no snitch rule, and they only will give up information if they're getting paid. But a reward might just make people talk. I'm for a positive resolution of finding the killer. I don't really care about all the other stuff. All the gossip and doxing people and accusing people of murder, because you don't know what effects that could have on a person. Because a lot of you, as I said, you're hiding behind a keyboard and a cell phone and a computer and an iPad going on and on and on about the killer. But you would lose your mind right now if people start camping outside your house, accusing you and bothering your mother and your father and your kids and saying you killed somebody because you were last with them or they broke up with you, so you must be angry. I don't really think you understand how you might be driven to kill your damn self if somebody started putting your name on social media and YouTube videos and TikTok videos saying you're the killer. So maybe you'll think twice before pointing fingers at Jack Decor and whoever else, grub bust videos and all that foolishness that you don't have no verification of nothing. This could just be a random person that killed these kids, and the killer's sitting back looking at everybody like, these people are so stupid. They think they know who I am. They think they know why I did it. They don't even know me. It's 6 weeks and you haven't caught me. See, you have to think like how the killer thinks. I'm invincible right now. Hell yeah, I'm watching the news and TikTok videos and YouTube videos, looking at the endless content these buffoons keep offering up as if they know who I am and why I did it. Did it ever dawn on you all that they could have just been killed for no reason? You better stay woke. Because that's the kind of world we live in. Somebody looked at somebody wrong, got followed home, followed on a highway interstate, and got their brains blown out. See, sometimes it's not what you think it is.
But they like to share what they know. It's the same way that they find cameras or find vehicles or identify something that they don't want anybody else to know. Especially in this case in Idaho, that they're looking for vehicles right now. Someone may come forth and feel comfortable talking to a private investigator and giving them information that I'm going to share with law enforcement. And anything that we get, we have a protocol to know if there's law enforcement involved. Anything we compile information, we're going to give to them. And we don't take things in their own hands and go above and beyond what law enforcement would do. We turn it over to them, which builds a relationship with us and law enforcement to know that we're credible.
You mentioned the search for the white Hyundai Elantra. We know earlier this week that one of those white Hyundai Elantras, one of the 22,000 that police are combing through, registrations and things like that, was ruled out in Eugene, Oregon. There was one found on a street corner there. It had been involved in a vehicle accident a couple of days before. It was sitting there with front end damage, no license plates. It certainly looked suspicious. They looked into it. They ruled it out, even though that vehicle is in the range of vehicles that they want to look at, 2011 to 2013. How daunting of a task is that to go through now 21,999 vehicles that you have remaining to try to piece together who may have been in that area that night?
Well, what they have to do is going through 21,999 now is one thing they got the Department of Motor Vehicles that can level down. That's how they come up with a number and be able to go through and see who these people might be, or if a name comes up that they find that matches something that they've got from a witness at the crime scene, or somebody that's a witness in this case, and try to match it up with somebody and talk to somebody that owns that vehicle. It's unfortunate that they don't have a tag number or a VIN number from what they found. And again, now their problem is being able to locate vehicles. The weather is hampering them unbelievably up there with the snow and ice and the bad weather. So it's going to slow this investigative down, and hopefully it doesn't become a cold case.
You've been in this business a long time, a PI for 40 years. Before that, a law enforcement officer, a sworn officer. From the outside looking in, and we don't know everything that they're doing, of course, but
exactly.
We know that they've got the Moscow PD working on this with the assistance of the FBI and the Idaho State Police. I hear you might become
Sorry about that brief intermission. We don't know what they're doing. That's why you can't judge and say what they don't have. Footprints, blood prints, trail. You know, by now they already know who was killed first. Because 9 times out of 10, he left the trail. How could he not?
What we know about what they're doing, we've been told they're using every available resource to look into this. They're combing through the video. They're combing through tips. They have about 15,000 tips now that they have to wade through, which is unbelievable to me. What is your assessment of what's going on with this investigation?
Well, I don't say the problem, but the FBI is well known that they're not going to release any information until they have diehard information they can go public with. So we really don't know what they have. I mean, it was in a very complicated crime scene, and there's things in that crime scene that can lead them to where they are to go to the outside. And again, they're bringing more FBI agents in, I understand, that are an expertise and these type of cases, and to be able to utilize. So again, we don't know what they have or what they don't have, but we have to move forward to keep gathering information. And I think it's real important that this case stays active in the media, because there may be somebody that remembers something or sees what's on TV that might be an asset to them, and they come to us as a private investigator And if there's one involved in that location up there, or if they end up calling us, because I know they're trying to raise money to hire a private investigator. And again, as I spoke earlier this week, we have two former homicide investigators that work with us, and I would be more than happy to send them there to work hands-on with law enforcement and to help gather information. As again, anything that we learn if we were working on the case, we would immediately turn it over to law enforcement to enhance the case.
In your experience, is it common to have a private investigator working hand in hand with law enforcement on a murder case that's active and ongoing, such as this one? We're about 40 days in on this case.
Absolutely. If you'll recall, when I worked the case in the disappearance of Natalie Holloway in Aruba, I started gathering information, and unfortunately, I learned that the lead investigator was Vandersloot's godfather, his dad's best friend, and worked in the Administrative Justice with Vandersloot's father from 95 to 98. I went out on the media and put that out there. I mean, that's huge. You got an investigator that's investigating somebody that he's related to is a big problem, a big problem. So, I mean, I had to expose that information publicly, and it was not good for law enforcement. But I'm just saying that I would do this in this particular instance, but using a private investigator to gather information from private individuals or witnesses that may be involved is an asset to law enforcement in this case. I think law enforcement there, with 3 different agencies working on this case, is an asset, and I think they're doing a great job and best that they can right now. But I just think it would be an asset to have another team of investigators there that the private individuals that we talked about may want to talk to us instead of law enforcement.
Between 10 and 15,000 tips, TJ, that's a lot. 10,000 to 15,000 tips that they're wading through. I have to think that there has to be something in some of those tips that is going to be helpful to this investigation. How difficult is it to go through that many tips? Even if you have 60 FBI agents, Idaho State Police, I can't even imagine.
They have professionals that do this for a living, working inside those agencies, to be able to go through and filter in on things that may be important in this case. I still get people calling me about a case in 2005 with the disappearance of Natalie Holloway. My phone still rings, and I still get emails, and we follow up with those leads as I did from the beginning. So you have to look and take everyone serious that somebody may know something that's going to enhance your case to be able to solve it.
And Natalie Holloway, the disappearance of Natalie Holloway, sadly, her body has still never been found. Horrible thing for her family. One last thing, people are fearful of coming forward if they have information because they are afraid that they are going to get in trouble. Let's say somebody does have information about this case and they fear knowing about it is going to get them in a lot of trouble. What's your recommendation to that person listening to this right now?
If they're so worried about getting in trouble and they have information that may solve a case like this, they need to get a lawyer and get a lawyer to give them information or protect them from any information they give. This car that they're looking for, this individual, is not a suspect. It's a person of interest they're looking for that may have additional information to lead them to solving this case.
Well, TJ Ward, private investigator. You can find him at tjwardpi.com. Also, the author of Guilt by Association. Thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time.
All right, everybody. That's Law and Crime Network. Thank you so much. This is information about hiring a PI. The Gonzaleses have hired a lawyer and a private investigator. One moment while I take a brief intermission. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. Well, some agree, some disagree. But as I said before, some people believe in the no snitch rule. They do not want to give information. A lot of people may feel like anything they have to show as far as video, going live, whatever, may show something illegal, so they don't want to get into any trouble. But as they have said, police, we're not worried about anything that you were doing and who's doing what in the background. We're trying to get information pertaining to these kids' deaths, anything that could be of use. So hopefully people will turn over any type of footage of going live or whatever. It's a very sad situation. It's horrific. Because 4 people are deceased, brutally killed. And I don't know why these children were killed, if they were targeted, but they're not coming back. And that's why people need to use some type of consideration in talking about this case publicly on a platform. Because it could be you, it could be your friend, your family, which is soever. And you wouldn't want people spreading such nasty rumors. As I said, we're all entitled to our opinion, and I've given my opinion strongly pertaining to people in related to deceased people or missing people. But I decided in this case, I would not speculate on who the killer is or a motive because there are too many moving parts, too many people to assume why they were killed. Because I don't know the kids, and I haven't heard anything to lead me down the road of bringing forth an assumption of who killed the kids or a suspect. 4 individuals, 4 separate entities, 4 separate identities, 4 separate attitudes, 4 separate dispositions. I don't know them. I don't know what they were doing, what kind of people they were, the people they interacted with. So there's no way I could assume who killed them. And I can't even assume who the target is. I have to know ironclad who the target is or was. And I don't have that. So I can't say. Will somebody talk to a private eye, give them information? And what will he gather, this private eye that's been hired by the Gonsalves? Will any information be given to him that will be of use, of help in this investigation? Hopefully so. I'm not going to be a Debbie Downer. I'm just wondering, will it help? Because 60 agents working seems to be enough people, state, federal, and plus law enforcement from Moscow. And my fear would be somebody talks to a private eye, he hands that information over to the police department, then they decide to go talk to that person or persons. Will the version be the same? See, that's where the problem's going to come in. Oh, I told the PI, I didn't tell you. So that'll go back to, well, then why did you speak in the first place? If you're going to backtrack on your statements. I don't know where this case is going. And I'm not going to assume it's cold. I'm just going to assume the killer planned this, orchestrated this crime for whatever reasons. He had no intention of getting caught. So perhaps he was meticulous in his planning and his execution and his removal from the property. And I think that's obvious because he has not been apprehended. No one's come forward to say they know who the killer is. The killer hasn't come forward to say who he is, if there are other co-conspirators, and the police has not given us any information. But that's not to say that they don't have a general idea. They might, because as I said, they have 60 agents working. So who's to say a profile has not come into fruition? They have found somebody or someone, plural, to fit the profile, but they need evidence. Did the killer leave behind anything? Fibers, hair, clothing, drop something? I don't know. Did he cut himself? I don't know. Did he leave behind any type of bodily fluids? I do not know. But maybe some of these things have come back through testing. Well, Queen Bee, that's the whole point of this conversation, is that we would hope that somebody would come forward to say they think they know who killed them or got information. See, I lean on prayer. I don't lean on the masses of assumption and what everybody else is doing, because to me, that's generalization and everybody thinking the same. And I refuse to be grouped in a box as everybody else, because I didn't make it to 51.2 by mistake. I do believe in somebody saying something is not right with this person. They're acting funny, strange. Their conversation has been deranged, demented, suspect, and I'm going to say something. Because I do know people don't like speaking and being involved anyway. Because some people just don't care. And I know that may sound eye-opening to some of you, but there are people who really don't care about the 4 kids being murdered. I talk to people every day who don't care about anything. They don't care about the weather. They don't care about who's in political office. They don't care about nothing. If it's not pertaining to them, they are not interested. And I find a lot of men who have this disposition and this type of mindset. So 9 times out of 10, it's a man that killed them. So there are going to be other men who have the same mindset. They don't care. They're not interested. They ain't worried about the killer. They don't care about talking about the killer. They ain't about to give no information. And you have women who have the same nasty ass attitude as well. They're not going to talk. But I pray somebody will come forward who is suspecting whomever of committing this crime. And young people do stick together. So the point is, people hold secrets, whether they are young, teenagers, school-age children, middle-aged, or elderly. And I think we know this from dealing with human beings. All of us have held the secret of something somebody has done and never told anybody. We have told secrets that maybe nobody ever told. So it doesn't matter about the age. If a person wants to tell, they'll tell. If they don't, then they don't. And young people hold secrets very well from what we've seen in history, especially when it comes to nefarious dealings. Children hold secrets very damn well, and young people will hold it because we have a lot of unsolved crime dealing with young people. So somebody knows something and they ain't told nobody. That is why the police is saying, if you have any information, footage of being out that night or whatever, don't worry about getting in trouble. We just want anything pertaining to that night, pertaining to the kids. We're not trying to get anyone in trouble. We just want to solve this case. And possibly, as they are saying, somebody has some type of footage, but it may be showing something that somebody didn't have any business doing in relation to that night. Prayers to all the family members, the community, the students, the staff, praying for a resolution, a positive resolution of finding the killer. Anybody that has knowledge thereof, they go down as well. Anybody that conspired with the killer, anybody aiding the killer, hiding the car, it's all the same. Somebody knows something because somebody always knows. And the killer has possibly been doing just what has been said in this audio that I've played earlier. He's probably talking, saying very nasty things about the victims, victim shaming. He's possibly been on the internet, in the chats, on the Facebook pages, Facebook groups, TikTok videos, speaking and talking and giving commentary. He's possibly been in this chat. Who's to say? Because I've been very leery of some of the comments I read in my own chat. The one reason why I don't really prefer to have a chat in talking about this subject matter, because I don't know who's chatting in the chat. And I don't want anyone helping aid fury pertaining to 4 dead kids. But yes, he's watching. Why would he not watch? Because he needs to know what's being said. He needs to know the updates pertaining to the police in the case. So he would be a fool not to watch. He needs to know if there was a description, who's come forward, who's speaking, who's talking, who's giving information pertaining to that night, the victims. Hell yeah, he's watching. And he's possibly typing like a MF on social media, So be leery of anybody saying anything derogatory about the victims and going on and on and on about what they could have done and not done. And it's not that the kids could not have done something to somebody to spite them and they decided to retaliate. But when the rhetoric is nonstop and vile, you would have to wonder who that person is that's typing. There's a killer born every day, killer made every day. And the motives for murder are always different. The description of the killer is always different. Short, tall, fat, white, black, Latino, could be a child, could be an adult, could be an elderly person. But murder is murder. The motive is always different. And that's what people need to understand about murder. That what made one person kill a person, that's not the same reason that somebody kills somebody else. And the reasons are up for interpretation. Was that worth killing someone over? Some believe in the death penalty, some do not. Some believe in redemption, releasing the convict after so many years. Your interpretation. But the killer is loose. So in the end, doesn't matter the motive. Plural. He's free like OJ all day. And he's walking around eating, sleeping, slumbering, watching TV, on social media apps, watching and gawking, God forbid, looking for his next victim, because you do not know who the perpetrator is. So you can't say he's done. He got his targets. You don't know that. And if, as they have said, if he was quick to anger, what's to keep him from killing somebody else over something similar to the reason he killed these kids? You just don't know who the killer is and his motivation. But know that he would kill again. Because if you can kill 4 people, target or no targets, you can go out and kill tomorrow. And the motive will mean nothing. Only outsiders are concerned with the motive. The killer is not. Because he doesn't care. And some of you need to understand that a person really doesn't need a motive to murder. Because you think there are people out here who have killed and had a reason. Some will tell you, I don't know why I did it. And that's the one that's even scarier. The one who killed and didn't know why he or she did it. But nonetheless, it's still a human life gone for nothing. And even if these children did something heinous, such as tease somebody, bully somebody, made a nasty comment, sly joke, prank, one would have to say it wasn't worth killing them all over. That, if that is the motivation. But people don't think the same. Because as I said, people have been killed for less than being spited, bullied, made fun of, rebuffed, not liked. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $Beganji, 129 Cash App. All stickers and chats are welcome during the live streams. Thank you for the donations and the super stickers and chats. God bless all of you. Happy holidays. Hope you all had a wonderful, Merry Christmas, prosperous New Year. The next live I bring to you will be something pertaining to what many do every day, and that is social media. Where would you be without it? And this case is a prime example of how social media has run amok and dominated a true crime case. But not just with true crime. Many of you are addicted to social media and you need it to survive. And why is that? The Queen is going to dig deep into this commentary. I will put the link up to see what people have to say. But I don't think some of you realize that you are addicted to your cell phone and Wi-Fi, and that you would be lost if today there was no more Wi-Fi, there was no more YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram. Could you go back to living the way you were? Because this is what I'm going to say during that live stream when I come back aboard. You lived before YouTube, Facebook. You went places. You traveled. You had alleged friends, families. You went to parties, functions, church. So what's the difference now? Because I had to question myself about that today. Because I know Queen better than anybody knows Queen. And I know that I was living before YouTube, Facebook, social media apps, date sites, all the same. And my life was as it was. I was living. Maybe not the best, but I was living. And my habits are the same. I'm the same Queen, same temperament, same oddities, everything. The only difference is I wasn't a YouTuber. Stay woke. But I'm the same person when I was not on social media. And I think a lot of people could not make it if there was no more chatting online and looking at pictures and snapshots and videos and uploads of people showing out and shaking their rear. They would be doomed. And I looked at something today on social media, and I said to myself, what is the point in even being involved in any of this? Watching somebody that I know of bend over, shaking their rump in front of a camera. Female. And I have to ask myself, is she somebody's mother? Why is she doing this? And what is the point to it all? To get what? Likes, comments, see what the guys are going to say about her big old rump. You see, that's drawing unnecessary attention that could also lead to a nasty accident if you follow where I'm going. That sometimes you can put yourself out there on a public platform and invite trouble. Now, you can argue, disagree, I don't care. But when you publicly post yourself in demeaning, and I say demeaning because it's true, posting pictures of your bum, your tail, your crotch, clothes on, clothes off, nasty commentary, throwing up birds, filthy mouth, tongue out your mouth, you're inviting trouble. Whether you realize it or not. Whether you are a teenager, a child, in your 20s, or you're my age, 50 plus. You're inviting trouble and you don't even know it. And now we have people telling you, you don't tell me what to do, I do what I want, I'm grown. Well, you remember that when trouble comes knocking at your door. Because that's possibly when you'll realize I probably shouldn't have been saying those things on Facebook. I shouldn't have been bending over with my ass up to the screen, shaking my rump. Shouldn't have been throwing up all them birds, telling people F you, this and that. I never understood that. Taking a picture and throwing up a bird, for what reason? That makes no sense to me. None whatsoever. That's my next live. Can you live without social media? You all have a wonderful week. Please go to my community board for the said information. All audio presented during this live stream is on my community page. Everything's been verified by a source. You're entitled to an interpretation of the information. Movie of the week is delivered. Series of the week is Alaska Daily, starring Hilary Swank. Also, movie suggestion of the week is No Exit. I want to say this to you just from the things I've watched that were all fictional in nature, but have possibly happened to somebody in real life. Be very careful of the company you keep. Be very careful of the company you keep that you tolerate when you see their behavior is sinister, diabolical, suspect. Be careful in meeting and greeting people and going into people's homes, inviting them into yours, sharing personal business, telling personal things, getting into cars, inviting people into your car, giving people rides, vice versa. You do not know people. And this is the reason why we have true crime, is because somebody broke protocol and trusted somebody. And in life, you're going to have to trust somebody because it is what it is. You're going to have to let somebody in your house to repair something. You have to live beside someone. You have to drive on the road. You have to patronize businesses. And you don't know how these things can invite trouble unexpectedly, or something you said or did, social media, or by your own tongue. But you can't trust people. And you do not want to become a victim on something that you could have avoided when you saw the signs that something was not right. And I'm speaking from personal experience. This is my testimony to you before I check out of here. Know when to fold, as not to become a news story or a YouTube video. Thank you for your time. You've been listening to The Vault.